Hello there, Seraphim17 once again. This is Fear 2, Project Origin, hard difficulty, no slow motion. So if you know much about this franchise, you will understand what I am endeavouring to do in this particular walkthrough. And the walkthrough will have all of the engagements trimmed together in succession with as much downtime as I can remove possibly, because this is Fear. And if anybody knows anything about this series of games, they have a lot of horror elements. They have sequences that are intended to build atmosphere and tension, and I'm going to keep in the ones that can keep a cohesion between the encounters, but fundamentally, if I can trim them out, I'm going to do it. And this initial one here is going to be a bit of a lengthy downtime, because it gives me an opportunity to speak about the game. I have you for about 3.5 hours for this one, ladies and gentlemen. This is a pretty lengthy walkthrough, and I don't actually recommend playing the Fear games without using slow motion. Slow motion is one of the most fun aspects of these games. The focus, the bullet time, whatever you want to call it, it's kind of how they've been balanced, and it's how they work the best. You are a super soldier, you get to do super soldier things, and when you take it away, you are at the mercy of aimbot, incredibly intelligent AI that does not hesitate to put you down. And this is about 10 years late for a conventional walkthrough, as Fear 2 came out before my YouTube channel even existed. But I wanted to come back and cover this game purely because there's nothing really to cover at the moment that's taking my fancy. And this is another game from a Balls Deep that I did, where at the time there was plenty of other projects to do and video games were popping, and there was lots to keep yourself busy with, and now that's not really the case. So I'm coming back to a game that I think we can all agree Fear 2 is a weak Fear and a poor sequel, but a good game. And the only real issue with this game is the development process and the fact that it follows one of the greatest first-person shooters ever made. But this is the first engagement of the game, where I'm going to be taking on some standard soldiers using this submachine gun. And the first thing you've probably noticed watching this is how weird the running animation looks. I mentioned this in the Singularity video, but when you run in this game, the guy puts his gun down and he has no visual impact of him moving. It looks like he's ghost walking across. He's like moonwalking or gliding. It's a very unusual animation that they've used. And this is the mighty monolith. We've gone from two big hitters here in walkthroughs. We've done Raven, massive for first-person shooters, especially on PC. Now we've got Monolith, equally as important, if not more so important than Raven. Two supremely, high-tiered god status first-person shooter torchbearers, I would call them. But this is before a lot of mechanics in games were standardized. This is before every first-person shooter was essentially the same homogeneous design. So there are things in this that are trying to borrow from modern conventions, and they're being fused with these old-school sensibilities. So you have this wonderful combination of oddities that build this game. And right there was an interesting example as well. That was a scripted sequence with a helicopter, and that helicopter can kill you. And in most modern games now, when you do those scripted sequences, you're probably not even intended to be shot. It's meant to just build spectacle. But this is not like that, you know, you can get hit by those. You can die in this game to scripted moments that you cannot affect. And that to me is absolute insanity and horrible, but it's kind of funny coming back to see that that's where games have come from. But here is the first of the descending skylight battles. Got a couple guys coming through the door directly in front of me. I'm going to whittle them down as best as I can. The biggest issue I found playing this game was that because it is an older game, it's really difficult to get the sensitivity to be where you want it to be. This game actually has really, really bad mouse input, and if you go to PC Gaming Wiki, you can search up Fear 2, and there is a universal mouse fix which will get rid of a lot of the shadiness to the mouse and make it dynamic, or native I should say. And when you get native mouse, you stand much more of a chance of being able to compete. But once again, this game's sensitivity options are kind of limited, so it was very difficult for me to find my aim. And what I ended up doing again is I ended up having to measure it, and I was measuring it in kind of a bootleg way, but it got me to a point where I was quite comfortable with it, and I am confident I can win most of these fights, and that's the reason that I'm making these videos, and hopefully it will lead to an enjoyable experience for you guys. And I have a lot to talk about with this game because I don't have much fear on my channel. And I don't have the best game on my channel, which is criminal considering that I bought the original Fear when it came out and fell in love with it and was obsessed with it and played the living hell out of it back on my old PC on mouse and keyboard, ladies and gentlemen, which, if you know me from YouTube, you know that I wasn't much of a mouse and keyboard enthusiast, even though back in the day when Fear came out I played it on mouse, and I even came from Operation Flashpoint, Soldier of Fortune and Max Payne, where I was forced to use mouse. But it was one of those things where I didn't really fall for it the way I've later fallen for it as I've got older. But did you see just how quickly I got wrecked then? Whew. And I need to talk about that before we start going into the dalliances of side topics. So this game starts out quite manageable in this particular stipulation of no slow motion. If your aim is quick, using this submachine gun you can generally get a few hits off on the enemies and stun them, and hopefully kill them quickly if your aim is true. Like just then, I'm able to take that guy down. He's very weak, him. However, this is a game that gets incrementally more difficult, and the troops get upgraded as you progress. Your weapons also upgrade, but the beefiness of the enemies feels like they get a lot stronger later on. They're more reinforced, they've got better armor. So at the start, gunfights that were quite challenging but fun, later on turn into gunfights that are quite frustrating and pretty unfair. Now, this is the first of our supernatural sequences here. And this is another thing I need to mention as well. You just witnessed it then. You might be wondering, Chris, what's happening with the video there? Why is it jumping like that? What's that stutter about? Well, this is the second greatest detriment to this walkthrough that you're going to witness in real time, and what I was fighting every gunfight I got into. Because this game was made for older machines, when you play it on new machines, weird things happen. So I'm getting a wonderful frame rate on this, I'm getting a great refresh rate, my game is running and feeling great, but every so often when enemies spawn, every time that the triggers are changing and the event scripting is happening, the game has these stutters, these huge stutters, and it's so unusual. You go into a room like this one, for instance. It didn't happen on this one, but you go into this room, you walk forward, and then all of a sudden you're looking at your feet. Because the game has just completely ignored your inputs and stuttered and thrown you off axis. And in the time it takes you to recover from where it puts you randomly, you can die. So I'm going to be fighting not only sensitivity that's not my own, AI that does not miss and can kill you really quickly, no slow motion and the whole game is balanced around slow motion, and then there are times when the game just decides to shit the bed and stutter all over the place where fighting back is nigh impossible. And you combine all these things together and you have a very, very, very interesting experience, and I really liked the start of this, as particularly using the submachine gun because it's got a decent red dot on it, but when the enemies get tougher and you're forced to use the assault rifle with the ACOG, my experience definitely suffered. And when the enemies become the replica soldiers, the legendary replica return, and when people get tankier and beefier and the fights get harder, you have to hit them a lot more. And the one thing you notice in this game a lot is because the enemies are so overtuned and really amped up and really intelligent, they will hit you when they're flinched. So you'll shoot them first, they'll be stunned, and as they're stunned, they're still tagging you. And because in this game, if you've noticed in the bottom left, you have an armor bar, that once that degrades, it goes to your HP bar, and your HP bar is then governed by med packs, but you do not regenerate in this game. This game is not in the convention of regenerating health, so I have to find armor to give myself a buffer from my HP, and if I have full armor and full HP, if I bump into a shotgun guy, I'm dead. You die so fast in this game when you want to. Like, the game will just put you down, and it doesn't really care. That was it! See that? That was a good example just then. I'm moving forward, I see armor, the game stutters, I'm looking at the ceiling. It's such a bizarre experience. And I was getting super tilted from it, and I was not going to make this project. And I looked online to see what the fixes were, and it's just one of those things where it's old game run weird. It's just that, you know, you can't really do too much with it. But here is the second interval. I believe there's something around 8 intervals in this game. Some of them are longer than others. And we're now moving around this hospital as it builds some tension with the atmosphere, and you're going to see a lot of this hospital because it lasts about 2 intervals. There's some good sequences, there's some not so good sequences. You can definitely complain about the level design on this particular area because it has that Fear trademark of it puts you in these domesticated areas, in these civic areas, and they do look very much like, you know, buildings and offices. And a lot of people find that stuff to be not as fantastical as some environments, and they overstay their welcome. Whereas I really like these grounded environments, and I like the idea of being able to move around and having these supernatural moments. And I played a lot of Fear, so I'm kind of immune to the horror in Fear. The only things that really get me are the jump scares when I don't notice them. But other than that, a lot of the times in this game, guys, when Alma turns up, she can't even hurt you. And once you understand that you can't be hurt, you're empowered and you'll never have a problem with it. And it's the same with the first game. Once you know what to do, when to run away from Alma, when not to run away, there's almost no risk in any of the scary moments. So it takes a scary game and it turns it into just a walking sequence. But this game also has boosters that enable you to upgrade the amount of slow motion that you get, and it might even enable you to increase your HP. I think that might only be the first game though, and I will be picking some of those up just because I pick things up. But this game is not like Singularity, guys. When I restart Checkpoint on this game, it does not give me a nice charitable heal. This game saves your status and says deal with it, and it makes it considerably more difficult than that project I made for Singularity. So it's a wonderful swan song to some PC ports that are actually console games, but it leads to difficulty. So right now I don't even have a gun, but we get the gun, we kill the first guy, we take out the second guy, and this enemy here is probably my favourite enemy in the game. It is some kind of cleanup crew member who's wearing some hazmat suit with an oxygen tank on his back, and if you hit the oxygen tank, he blows up and it like dismembers him in a wonderful, grotesque way. He has what I would say is the perfect amount of HP for the enemies in this game. However, you are never going to see an enemy with the HP of this guy for the rest of the game after you stop seeing him. Everybody else is super beefy. And here is my first grenade of the game too. Throwing grenades without slow motion is kind of a... it's something that I don't particularly enjoy as much. Although the grenades are incredibly good and they give you so many of them. At the beginning of this run, I'm not going to use the grenades too much, but I found myself with such a stockpile, I had to start using them. And you might think, you know, grenades are super powerful, and that was a stutter again, in the middle of a fight. Did you see that? Terrifying. There's a guy's gun going nuts. But you might think using the grenades is the smartest choice, and it absolutely is. But the mentality that I came into this project with was I did it again, another stutter during a gunfight. It was to try and outbeat the machine in the gunfights. I wanted to show that you can compete with perfect aim, and you know the computer doesn't always get to win. But you need to understand here, guys, every single victory is a Pyrrhic victory. Every battle you fight is a losing battle, because you never come out of these clean. You never come out unscathed. And I just don't think you can, unless you play like an absolute coward and grind checkpoints to try and get the runs where they don't hit you. If you try to engage these enemies like I do and push and try to flick between targets and get some fun looking gameplay, you just get tagged. You get hit, you get tagged, you die a lot, and it's that kind of game. So as long as you don't get into too much of a deficit, you will generally find health and armor to bring yourself back up. But if you get into a bad place where you're low on HP, you're going to be fighting your way out of a very difficult corner. And the issue with this game is the main issue with Fear 2. If you know the dev cycle of this game, you'll know that the people that made Fear weren't really able to make a sequel to Fear because of licensing and politics and bureaucracy. So instead they were making an unofficial sequel, which was absolutely a sequel, but they were going to call it Project Origin. And they were making two versions of the game before it ended up, you know, the licenses changed and it was able to become Fear 2 Project Origin. But because of this, the game that they designated for PC, which was going to be its own thing, ended up getting scrapped. And the game that was designated for console, which is the game we ended up getting, is the game that every version of the game became. So you can tell that this is a console game because of its limitation and its design. It is designed around a controller. It is designed around the paradigms that were on console at the time. This is closer to console shooters than it is Fear 1. You know, think of the things that are in Fear 1. Think of the oddities and the PC eccentricities that you see in that game. They're not present in this, you know. And because of that, it makes my job much more difficult. And it makes Fear 2 a much more inferior game. Even though there are moments of this game that are really, really good and I especially really, really enjoy. But we have a little standoff here next to the elevator, and we're fighting micro-stutters and men that are shooting me while they're flinching, which... that's the thing that I would absolutely change if I could. When you hit someone and they stagger, they should not be able to like wave their arms around and still hit you with bullets. But it goes to show just how tuned they are. The enemies are incredibly tuned and tanked up. But let's talk about grenades, as we open a lift here and get into an interesting gunfight with these three dudes. Like, look at that. That right there, guys, is as good as I can do it, you know? I hit each of those people as quickly as I could. I hit them center mass to the face if I could, and they still hit me. I was strafing too, you know? Like, you do what you can, but they're just better. It's just that simple. So let's talk about grenades, because I need to tell you this. If you want to follow this and do this challenge yourself, and you want to follow my strategies completely, you have to save your grenades for the end of the game. And this does not mean never use grenades, it means the opposite. Use as many grenades as you want, but keep the electrical ones. There are shock grenades that you get, and their use is to stun enemies. I never use them to stun enemies because I want to just get into proper gunfights and overcome. However, when the robots turn up and they throw the mini-boss robots at you, they're really good for stunning those guys and getting some nice dirty damage. But I didn't use them too much, and you get quite a lot of them, and they're really, really strong. They're probably quite broken if you want to use them a bit more flagrantly than I do. But at the end of the game, there is a really difficult sequence where you get attacked by ghost soldiers, and the ghosts only take a few hits to die. The grenades take them out immediately. So if you throw a grenade, you can then run into the aftermath of it, and you'll have cleared out all the people that will spawn and hurt you, and it makes the final sequence of the game a lot more manageable. Watch this, by the way. See that? That enemy right there, he has to execute that doctor before his HP threshold can be touched. So the reason he took so many bullets to his face was because of that. And at this moment in the game, you can swap between grenade types by pressing a certain key binding. You can swap between fully automatic to semi-auto and even burst, I think. There are a lot of features that you can do to make your life a little bit more specific if you need them. But at this time, I didn't have the bindings for changing grenades, and that's the reason I didn't use them. I was originally not going to use them at all, but I realised I was getting so many, and the game started to kill me. When I first started this project, I didn't really know what I was getting in for, because I've never played Fear without slow-mo. I always thought it was probably too difficult to do, and I can confirm that that's not true, but it's definitely unreasonable at times. And it's unreasonable in places that you wouldn't expect. Because this game has got some interesting tropes that were put into it because, you know, sequel needs to go bigger and more grand. And additionally, there were a lot of tropes happening on console at this moment that people wanted to ape. So, this game has mechs, for some reason. And of all the games to have mechs, it makes sense for Fear to have them, because they were in the first game, they're part of the lore, they're part of the world. But now you get to drive them. And I'm happy to say, guys, that the mech sequences, when I first played them, I thought they were great. Played them back in the day when the game came out, I thought they were a fun addition. You know, I did them, I shot people in the big robot, I had a good time. Coming back to it on PC, I hated them. And I hated them for a few reasons. The screen shakes like something furious. The sensitivity is completely wrong, so I can't even aim during those moments. There's so much noise and film grain on the screen that you can't see a bloody thing. And believe it or not, when you do it without slow motion, it's really easy to die. So, not the first mech sequence is fine, but the second mech sequence in the game is actually one of the most difficult, tedious parts of this run. And because this run is meant to be about shooting, running and gunning, being the point man, even though in this game I think you play as Beckett, like, the whole point of this, guys, is for me to run around with my gun and try and outshoot the soldiers. That's the point of this particular project. This is not meant to be a walkthrough for somebody to get through the game, even though you can absolutely use it for that. And with that said, guys, I've removed the robot sequences, because they're boring as fuck, and they added nearly 40 minutes to this run, and I just didn't want to sit through them and talk about them. So when I get to the robots, guys, I'll open the robot, it'll transition, I'll get out of the robot, the whole sequence will be gone. And the only thing to tell you, if you are following this challenge, is take it slow. If you take it slow, you'll have no problems. It's just incredibly boring, because they can kill you in about 3 rockets if they hit you right. And in that final sequence, there's like 7 rocket guys. There's about 2 or 3 robots, and then there's a big robot at the end. And there's no checkpoint either, which is another one of the shit parts of this game that it's inherited from this console design. So this game is completely checkpoint bound now. In the original Fear, you could quick save at any moment and quick load, and it made the game incredibly fun. Because if you wanted to save scum after every bullet you fire, you can do that. If you want to do some Iron Man challenge where you never save and if you die you're over with, you can do that. On this game, you can't... Look, see that? See that? Where the fuck am I? I don't even know where I am. Madness. How is it that we have all these amazing games and they haven't gone back and brought them forward? Like, they've remastered Dark Souls for fuck's sake, dude. Arkham, all these other games. Games, like, why would you remake Arkham City? The game is practically flawless. And yet we have a game like this that came out in the weird, teething intermediary stage of first-person shooters that's got all these weird, janky features. And we don't have another version of this, a cleaner version of this, a tighter version of this. Where's the Fear collection, you know? Bring these games up to a modern standard and take the fucking stuttering out, please. It's just monstrous. And it's ironic too, because if I put this on my old shitty PC, it'd run better. I'm using a 3080, for God's sake. My fucking Voodoo would run this game better. Madness, right? But you can't save. And when you can't save, guys, you can't segment the whole run. And when you can't segment the whole run, it means you're playing on the developer's terms, not your own terms. And it has to be said, as much as I'm going to critique this because I can't stand games that go from quick save to shitty checkpoints, because to me that's a devolution. That's the opposite of what you want. Being able to save anywhere versus never being able to save is fucking stupid. It doesn't make any sense. This sequence right now, you're going to get assailed by a bunch of guys behind you, so just dig in and see what you can do. You might also notice the gun wobbling around. Believe it or not, the guns in this game do have a decent amount of recoil. It's not huge, but it's got some wobble to it that makes it feel like you're shooting a gun. And that guy just bum rushed me, takes half my armor, what a beast. But as I was saying, sorry, the checkpoints are pretty good. There's only one checkpoint in the game that really bugged me. And it's when you have to take on a bunch of assassins at the end of the game. And the assassins, without slow motion, they're fucking unreasonable. it's not a fun time. Because they're the fastest enemy in the game outside of the little scrubber guy who doesn't really count. Like, all they do is all kinds of crazy gymnastics, and because they're invisible, it's really easy for you to miss them. So if you don't see the Predator effect, you end up getting into all kinds of bother, and I never even noticed that the assassins could be all that much of a problem, because you just slow down you slow time down and they can't do much. But when you can't slow them down, you get into situations of, you can see him, you need to shoot him, and he still hits you. Because stopping the assassins can be a big pain in the ass. But you can hear the person there is to the right. And if you don't know, ladies and gentlemen, the AI that's governing these soldiers right now is a famous AI that was created for the original Fear. It was an AI that went on to be outsourced to a lot of people. A lot of people bought the AI and used it in their games, and it's one of the more famous and more interesting AIs because they're interesting as hell. They will constantly be telling you what they're up to, they're constantly communicating, and they're always doing interesting things like mantling stuff and going through doors and like trying to flank you. And the great weakness of them is that they tell you that they're flanking, and that they tell you that they're going to throw a grenade and everything, and it's audio telegraphs to make your life easier. But I will never forget the first Fear for the AI because I'd never seen enemies do what they did. And it was definitely a landmark in artificial intelligence for video games, and you probably will come back to this and you might not think it's all that impressive, but at the time, ooh, that's a problem too. I completely forgot about the screen shake. So, when you get shot, when things blow up, when certain events are happening, there's this screen shake, and it's not just screen shake, guys. It's literal camera shake, and it's camera shake on a weird axis. It's not your camera that you're controlling, it's the camera that's just ambient that you don't control. So the whole screen just starts looking like someone's shaking the cameraman on his core, and it's the strangest feeling screen shake I've seen in a while, and I don't remember it at all. But it's the kind of screen shake that you see in like early Call of Duty, where explosions are going off and the screen's blurring and they're shifting the anchor point of the screen perspective, and it's just, why does this exist? It's the type of thing now that when the games would come out, we could turn that off. And I love that that's where we're at, because going back to these older games and suffering these weird choices in cinematic flair. It's rough. It's super rough, and I know there's some guy out there that's playing on a 400-inch TV. He's in like some cinema somewhere projecting it on the screen, and he's sat there with 9,000 speakers all around him being buffered by audio, and he's loving life and thinking it's the best experience he's ever had, and I'm really happy for that guy, but that guy's playing on 400 years of input delay. You know, he's wondering why he can't win a gunfight on Warzone, and it's because his game is running 25 minutes before everybody else's. Like, it's just... There are some things that you have to sacrifice if you want your game to be responsive and if you want to be competitive, and unfortunately, that's one of them. You can't have shit shaking everywhere. Like, look at the sky then, did you see that? I wonder if that's something going wrong. Because it's interesting, isn't it, that you have to do all these weird fixes to even make the game in a playable state? And you've got to do it for all of the PC ports in, like, the late 2000s. For some reason, PC ports were just... I don't want to call it lazy because I don't know how much work went into them, but they were bad, really bad, and they are bad still, but they're a lot better than they were, and it definitely gives you hope that incrementally they might start getting a little bit better, and a little bit better, and it's unfortunate that the PC market is a much smaller demographic, because if it wasn't, it would drive the demand, and when you have demand, you have to fix these things. And instead, you just get me talking about things that most people don't even understand and most people don't care about. But I do, you know. I want to be able to play these games. I want to be able to use my graphics card to boost them up and to show you what they're capable of, to show you how beautiful their art design was. Because this game looks amazing, you know. When you're playing it at high frames, when you're playing it at high resolution, when everything's getting touched by a graphically superior hardware... And in spite of the problems that they cause because they weren't built for this architecture, you know, it shows just how great and how creative the design was that went into making the games. But ventilation would not be a first-person shooter without a little bit of the old cheeky ventilation. We've got our team talking on our HUD here repeatedly. The team in this game is kinda there just to be ritualistically sacrificed up to the horror elements of the game. This is the Flamethrower Enemy here. Very unique dude. Don't really get this enemy too much. Well, you might also have noticed if you look at the bottom left, when you sprint, you have a sprint bar. You can see how much sprint you have, you can see how much you're losing, you can see where you have to stop. And I think that's a really interesting choice, because a lot of first-person shooters at this point, they did not have unlimited sprint, and they did not show you the limit of your sprint either. So here's a random dude trying to punch me. You might not have realised that Fear has quite a lot of melee options. They were inspired by like John Woo movies with the slow motion and a lot of the Japanese cinema or Chinese cinema, whatever you want to say. Technically John Woo is Chinese and his movies were Chinese, but you know what I mean. Asian cinema, if you can even say that without being a giant racist. And one element of those movies were the Hong Kong action scene, you know, the violence, the high kicks, the slow motion, the choreography. And Fear utilizes that to varying degrees of quality. So in this game, if you're sprinting and you slide, if you press the melee button while you slide, you will do a kick. And similarly, if you jump and you press the melee button, you'll also do a kick. And there were these interesting melee options that they went with. And it gives the game a ton of character. But in this run, you simply can't do that. Because when you get that close, they kill you quick. And when there's no slow motion, you don't have a grace window to do any of these fancy moves. So unfortunately, guys, you won't see me running around the world kicking people. As much as I would have loved to have done that. Like, I have to play like my life depends on it, because it really does. You know, I have to peek every corner, and I have to be quick, and I have to make sure that I put them down as swiftly as possible, because if I don't, they chip away at me and I'm dead. It's just that simple. And these guys have shotguns too. So the shotgun is really easy to see because he's wearing like a white sugar puff outfit. Like, these guys are normal dudes. They remind... Wow, look at that. He's having none of it. I'm getting tagged. Interesting that you can see the silhouette of them through the smoke. I think that's to do with the graphics engine. Not like running right with the lighting. And the sky right now is having problems too. The sky's not meant to look like this, guys. It's having difficulties being rendered on new hardware. But this gun you start with is pretty weak, but it's got 50 rounds. It's clearly some kind of P90 derivative. It's this bullpup with a lot of bullets, and the good thing about having a lot of bullets and a high fire rate is you can put a lot of damage down the range, and you can also put a lot of stun. And the gun that we get after this is a lot more powerful, but it has a worse scope, and anything that gets rid of your visibility makes this game a lot more difficult. You've probably noticed I've picked up the shotgun, the automatic shotgun, or is it the normal shotgun at first? I think it's the normal shotgun. The shotgun in this game is fucking horrible. It's absolute garbage, and it's really sad too, because the shotgun in Fear is one of the most legendary shotguns in video games, and in this game they just got it wrong. And I don't know how you get it so right and then get it so wrong in succession. It doesn't make sense to me, that. And I'm going to say that I hate the shotgun and that you shouldn't use the shotgun, but even then, even a bad shotgun is still pretty good. So, the shotgun's greatest asset is its flinch. When you flinch them, it gives you enough time to run up and put them down. And then later on, when you get the direct upgrade, which is the automatic shotgun, you can shoot pretty quickly, and it really compensates for the fact that it doesn't do the damage it should do. And I'm going to use the auto shotgun a decent amount because you can just kind of pre-aim it round a corner and put people down. And it's for the diversity as well. But this game came at a moment when first-person shooters at this point were all turning into these military aim-down sights. Every gun has got some fancy optic, some fancy red dot this, red dot that, optic that. So we had this standardization of military shooting. And Monolith, if you remember, on the original Fear, they did not have aim-down sights. They had the zoom. They had the classic hipfire zoom that a lot of games used to use, the old GoldenEye style zoom without the weird, now you can't move and you've got that weird aimer. But it just zoomed the screen in and gave you more precise aim. GoldenEye didn't zoom though, I don't think. I just, GoldenEye references that don't even work. Why not? And it was interesting because it kept visibility. It gave you full visibility of what you were doing, and it enabled you to be very deadly. Whereas in this game, when you ADS with some of these guns, you can't see. And when you're blocking your peripheral vision, you are losing tools needed to survive. And this is probably the best gun for visibility. But later on, this gun is really going to start feeling weak, and it's going to feel like you just can't compete with it. So you're going to have to either commit to it and have to hit them a few more times, or you're going to have to dump it and get something else. And I'm going to try my best to use a little bit of hipfire if I can, but the hipfire in this game is not accurate. If you look at the hipfire reticle in this game compared to the hipfire reticle in the original Fear, you will understand another casualty of modernization of military shooters. Hipfire in old school games used to be nigh perfect. There wasn't reticle bloom, there wasn't spread, there wasn't spray. It comes from the Doom, from the Doom design of the center of the screen is where the bullet goes, and if you're using a shotgun, you've got a bit of spread. Everything else is kind of uniform. And it was an interesting design, an arcadey design, and I miss it, I really do. I miss it like I miss Hitscan. And Hitscan is... Why, see this? See that right there? That guy who just got killed by the scrubber is invincible, because he's a scripted soldier. He killed me before the scrubber killed him. I just died on that corridor that you'll see it at the end of the video. I died to a scripted sequence because the scripted sequence was apparently too lengthy, or I was too aggressive, and I aggroed the guard before it triggered the sequence. This is the type of stuff, guys, that would never happen anymore. It would never happen. They wouldn't even let that guy be an enemy. He would just be a cipher to be killed. But in this game, he has his programming on, and if you get unlucky, he's just like, oh, bad guy, dead. He just kills you. And it was the funniest thing. I wasn't even angry. I just laughed. Because I've never... well, this is a lie. I don't remember games having those moments, because it's so long ago when you got cursed by them, basically. Like... You don't remember these goofy things that happened in old school games. And this game's not even that old. You go back 10 years, it gets even goofier. But these enemies right here, these are the enemies that I call scrubbers. These are prisoners that they've been experimenting on. And they're really fast. They're these super, spindly, really wiry crack addicts that are just amped up, and they come and they beat you up. They die quite quickly, but every so often they do get a bit tanky. And the problem is, they're fast, and you have no slow-mo. If you're using slow-mo, you'll never have a problem with these enemies. If you're not using slow-mo, you kind of have to batten down the hatches, stick your back in a wall, or use the shotgun. And I think at this point I've kind of forgot I've got the shotgun because I just remember how much I hate it and how bad it is. But for these enemies, the shotgun's actually pretty good. Because they have to get close. But their movement is so unnerving. Like, the first time you saw it, when I was originally playing the game, it made me shiver. I don't know if you felt the same. They've definitely tapped into something primordial there. Something right in the back of the serpent brain that's just like, oof, don't like that guy. That guy's unnatural. But those enemies are good. I like them. They're hard, they're dangerous, and they affect the pacing in such a way that you know when you see one of those dudes, you're going to go through a tense moment of getting ambushed by these speedy melee enemies. And I think that's how you do melee enemies. This is one of the things that Fear 3 just completely goofed on. And Fear 3 goofed on almost everything. Like, Fear 3 is not a very good game, and it's a terrible Fear. It's one of those things where if you can turn your brain off, you can probably enjoy it, but it's so unnecessary. Super unnecessary, really. But move through the vent, see what you can do. Lots of gore here, lots of set dressing with just monstrosities, and there's a nice transition, and we're back in. But I like the hospital level on this because it really develops. It starts from just the abandoned, creepy hospital, and then it gets to the unauthorized, dark site, black level operations where they're using human experiments. It's very cliche, and it's kind of every single thing that does a hospital does it like this, but it's because it works, It's one of those universal motifs. Hospitals are scary. They just are. Like, hospitals are a wonderful salvation, but for a lot of people, they can be a huge source of misery and anxiety. So, you put yourself in the shoes, don't you? You put yourself in the hospital. It's already quite an unnerving place. And then you fill it full of eldritch terror and crack shot shooting AI monstrosity men, and then you have to run around and take them down. And I haven't even mentioned the fire extinguishers. The fire extinguishers are legendary in Fear. So when you shoot a fire extinguisher, I don't think they explode. I just don't think they're designed that way. For a safety tool to explode when something happens to it, probably a bad idea. That's not to say that you can't use some kind of chemical reaction to make them explode, and in some circumstances they probably can, but fundamentally fire extinguishers are not like portable explosives. Video games have turned them into that, and I think some crazy scientist could probably do the same, but it would probably take him forever and not be half as effective. And in Fear, they're as good as they get. In this game, you shoot a fire extinguisher when someone's near it, they are dead. They are guaranteed dead. It's as good as it gets. It's such an empowering tool. And in the first Fear, there were so many circumstances where you could almost wipe full squads by using fire extinguishers cleverly with grenades and things. Like, it was really, really effective. Did you see that just then? That hazmat guy just moved the gurney to use it as cover. I love little touches like that. This is the type of stuff that happens every day in games now, and we don't even realise. But when you see it happening in the older games, it resonates on such a level. But engage in the gunfights. I also like how the pillars destruct as well, and you can see the rebar beneath, you can see the cracking of the concrete and the skeleton underneath. It's such a nice touch. It's another thing that we don't see too much of in video games, destruction. Take it slow. I've now got the flame grenade on. I don't know if I did that intentionally. I've edited out all the times when I went into my bindings because I just didn't think that was something you wanted to see. Yeah, we put the shotgun on. You might notice as well I'm cycling through my weapons like this. The reason I'm doing that is because of the way that the bindings work. I'm trying to understand the order of the weapons, and in this game you can only carry a few guns. Which, I don't remember the original Fear. I think you can only carry 2 or 3 guns in the original Fear, right? I think you carry a main gun and a sidearm, and it limits it in that horror sense where you're not too capable. I would really have liked it to be able to carry as many as you want, because I'm not a big fan of this Halo design, and I don't know what game did it first. It might not be Halo, but Halo reminds me of the shift in the industry when every game went from having 50 guns in your pocket to having 2 guns, and always having that awful moment of you've got 2 guns you really like, and then you find a rocket launcher, and then you have to drop a gun that you like and you don't want to waste. Like, is there anything worse than that? I think that is the equivalent of hoarding resources in a JRPG. Like, finding a good gun when you have the 2 guns you want, but you are limited to holding a certain amount of an arsenal, is the same as hoarding megalixirs and never using them. And I'm in a situation like that right now with Octopath Traveler. I think I'm going to record that, actually. I think I'm going to do the Lone Traveler for YouTube, because I've never done it before, and it gives me an opportunity to cover that game. And I love Octopath Traveler. It's a really sick game, so I'm going to share that with you guys. But in that game, there is an item known as a pomegranate, and it gives you battle points, which are one of the most powerful tools to doing damage in the whole game. And I never use them. You know, my first clear of that game involved the challenge run where I didn't even use items. You know, I've played that game under so many restrictions, I don't even know what half the items are even to do. And now that I can use the items because I'm doing a casual run, I'm looking at them and thinking, wow, these are really, really good. And the only thing I've got left to do in that game, other than some achievements I'm probably never going to do because they're really, really hard, and they're just like, find a million things with no way to know which ones you found, kill Geldera, kill the secret post-game boss, who's really, really ridiculous unless you War Master his tits off. So I'm going to use them on him, you know? I've got like 50 of the bloody things. I'm absolutely going to use them on him. And it's just that simple. But it's interesting, isn't it, that we've gone from so much choice and so many options to completely limiting ourselves and feeling like we're not as capable. And now Doom Eternal comes along, and now you're carrying fucking 8 guns. Have you ever tried to press 8 on your keyboard while holding W? There's a reason why 2 guns is sometimes a good idea, but I love the fact that Doom Eternal's come along, and it's shown us that we can go back to these old school mentalities. And the one thing I want right now, guys, which we're not going to see because the industry's just not the same, games aren't made the same, they're too expensive, they never take risks because it's not safe, they just want to give you a delivery system to a battle pass and all the cosmetics you can sell. So taking risks with cool video games and cool concepts is just not what they're going to do because it's not financially backable. But I would love to see some Doom Eternal clones. Look at the screen shake! Look at this! What the fuck? Oh my god, just watching that makes me angry. How are you supposed to fight that? It's so horrible. And it's such an old school thing, that. It's such a... Ooh, we're getting more realistic, we need these atmospheric effects happening. Everything's exploding, we've got to give it all this realistic touches, and it's just, no. You're ruining the gameplay. Just stop, please. Give us a journalist mode where that shit happens, dude. Make the gun auto-fire. Make it like fucking Red Faction on PS2. Like, who needs to aim, right? Just let the game do it. That was a nice fight. This is a really interesting sequence, this, as well, as we move underground here through this cave system. This van's going to drop out some dudes later on, I think. One of the things I really like about fear, that is less prevalent in this game but still present at times, is that I feel like almost every fight in the game, you can learn the spawn, understand it, and do something really, really creative to completely neutralize it. And I don't know what this is called. I don't know if it has a name in design. I don't know if somebody's analysed it and come up with a name. And I'm amazed that I haven't come up with a name for it, because it's something that I first noticed in a game like Fear, in a game like Gears of War. The idea of having this spawn system that you can dynamically react to and neutralise before it does what it's intended to do. Sealing emergence holes in Gears of War, to me, is one of the cleverest ways of giving you a high-risk, high-reward, skillful strategy to overcome an entire battle. And I love that. I think that is wonderful design. That man has a shotgun. You will probably never see me get hit by a shotgun, guys, because every time it happens, you die. And this game has a really good game over screen, too, because it cracks the camera and the camera falls down. And I actually think that's really cool. It's one of the cinematic aspects I think they did really well. And I do apologise if you think I'm playing cowardly, dudes, but if you've never tried this, if I rush around these corners and there's 2 dudes, I'm dead. They kill you so fast, they strip your armor so quick, and you need every resource you can to survive some of these moments. And believe it or not, ammo becomes a problem too. If you're using a gun that the devs don't want you to be using in that area, then they stop making the enemies carry it, and they stop populating the world with it. So once you pick up that second assault rifle that I'm not using, the game doesn't want you to use the submachine gun anymore. They want you to use the AR. So they'll really force the AR on you, and I really didn't want to use it, because it's good, but it's not as good as the sub for what I need. It's got the same red dot as well as the G36 in the campaign on COD 4, and that red dot's not too bad, that optic. It's like half ACOG, half red dot, but I've got to the point now, guys, where I want to be able to see, you know? When I aim down sights, especially on PC, when you use mouse and keyboard, when you don't have aim assist to keep you on target, you need to be able to see. All it takes is one nudge or one moment where your hand's not doing what it needs to do. And it happens to us all, you know? No matter how good your aim gets, you always have those moments where you're like, why am I not tracking that person? Why did I stop tracking that man and now I'm dead? Oh, this is a flamethrower guy, right? So I put a pool of fire out to see if I can set him on fire, see what it would do. I wanted it to make him flinch. And then I just start shooting at him, and he's using a projectile flame weapon. It fires like a blob of flame. And I think this game has predominantly hit scan. Because this was in the days, guys, where the enemies were hit scan, so when they shoot at you, if they're on you, you get hit. And we don't get hit scan anymore. I miss it. I don't know if this one is. I think it is, because you die pretty fast. I know the original Fear is, because that was hit scan City, right, back in those days. What was it, 2007? That's when hit scan was king. And if you don't know what hit scan is, I know I talk about this a lot, and I assume that everybody understands what I understand. You can Google it, and you've probably already Googled it, but if you didn't, hit scan just means, guys, that if you put your dot on an enemy, when you press the trigger, the game will scan that you've targeted an enemy, and if you've hit an enemy, your bullet will hit them. There's no travel time, there's no projectile, there's no bullet, it's just a laser. It just goes, does this hit, does this not hit? It's battleships, you know? Whereas projectile, when you fire the bullet, the enemy has to be there once the bullet has arrived, and the bullet will have a travel time. And some games that are projectile that you don't realise, they have really high bullet velocity, so their muzzle velocity is high, and it makes the bullet move really quickly. However, if the bullets move really slowly, like Agent Under Fire or 007 Nightfire, you can see the bullets as they have a smoke break, visit an old relative, and then continue on their designated path. And it looks like you're firing fruit at people, like you're using some faux weapon of nonsense to make yourself look like a huge jester, and it's incredibly frustrating. And that means that you have to lead your bullets, you can see the bullets, and it feels like your bullets are moving in slow motion, and it's a horrible feeling. And it's one of the reasons why I just don't think that projectile is as satisfying as hit scan. I think projectile is more skillful than hit scan, but I fundamentally just do not find it as fun. This is a really good piece of cover, this box here, because it gives you almost a perfect head glitch. And this is back in the days where head glitches are really powerful. So getting into a power position where the AI can't see your center mass will make it more difficult for them to hit you, and you totally want to use that. But you'll notice there's a lot of silence in this game too. There's a lot of audio stingers, there's a lot of moments where the game goes quiet and then you can hear your footsteps. It uses the quiet rather well, I think. There's a lot of games with less discipline than Fear. And I don't think Fear's a great horror game. I think it's a great schlocky action game with Korean horror elements. But as far as being afraid of it, I played the original, that's a stutter right there. I played the original when I was quite young. And I was quite nervous when I played it, but I was never scared. Nervous, yes. Scared, no. It just wasn't that kind of game for me, you know? So this box here is also a really, really good head glitch too. And these are the soldiers. These are really fun to fight, these guys. Did you see him running, pointing his gun sideways and still hitting me? What a beast. Guy's a straight bitch. But just then, did you notice they don't shoot you when you're behind that crate? They run around it. Ultimate kill box right now. So I can use this to get them where I need them to be. And if they climb ladders, they're dead. Did that man just hit me when he was climbing a ladder? I'm telling you, boys and girls, this game is mad. But I do like it. It's such an interesting conversation for you too. It had so much to live up to, and it's such a different game. Like, it's different in so many ways. And I think it's easy to just critique it and complain about it, but it did do a lot of good things too. That was weird. Was that a stutter, or was that an edit? I can't even tell. Something happened then. I don't think I had any crashes when I played, which is refreshing, because getting crashes is the worst. This is a good box as well. See this? This is what you want to be doing. Really effective. There's some HP. That's it. showing us that there's a gas valve over there making people explode. That guy has a shotgun. Be very careful of him. If I get hit right now by a shotgunner, I am dead. Like, always assume that you're going to instantly die to those men because they kill you so fast. I mentioned before, though, didn't I, that the music went really quiet for the purpose of adding that stinger and letting us hear those atmospherics. Now it has this weird kind of music going on, giving the idea of this industrial place that we're at and all this equipment and all this interesting detail they've got going. I miss Monolith, guys. I miss them so much. I've said this before and I'll say it again. There's just something about people that made first-person shooters when first-person shooters weren't as prevalent. Those people that stuck in there and committed to this medium and got really good at it too. Really good at innovating and being creative and doing what they could do. Like, even that there. The model of the gun clips through his arm and the wrist looks a bit weird on the rigging. But just the creativity of holding the gun up slightly while you turn the handle with one hand. It's moments like that and touches like that that show you that they really love the medium of the perspective. And Monolith have done really good things with first-person shooters to really commit to the immersion. And I really think that if it wasn't for studios like them, you wouldn't have got your Starbreezers. You know, I don't think your Infinity Wards would have been as strong either. I feel like people like that must have been influenced in some way by some of the work that this team did. And this team exists because of id, you know? They essentially made a mod for Doom, you know, Doom clones. Good Doom clones as well. Like, just committing to this wonderful genre and enriching it and building it. And now that shooters are so ubiquitous and so big, they moved on to something else. And they're seeing a lot of success with the Nemesis system and the Lord of the Rings game that they've made. But I just wish they'd come back and represent the shooters again. Because they've done... Some of their shooters are some of the all-time greats, and I'd love to go back and cover them, but they're difficult to get. And ones like Condemned 2. Condemned 2 is not a great game, but it's such a unique game. It's a dumb game, and it's a game that I really love. Even though I know it's not that great, you know? There's parts of Condemned 2 that I just don't understand. You know, when they make the screen really dark and really staticky, and like, who the hell is that scaring? Who's nervous when you can't see out and the game just looks mad ugly and you're squinting your eyes the whole time? It's a horrible motif and they committed to it the whole game. But I still love that game, you know? I love the melee combat. I love the idea of it. I love the Condemned franchise. But that game's not on PC. That game's a console game. Why? Why isn't it on PC? Condemned 1 is on PC, and Condemned 1's an absolute classic. Easily the best Condemned game. And it's got some really, really cool features and some really unique stuff, and it's super janky and super goofy, and I adore it. Problem with that game is the mouse is insane, dude. You can put that on 1 sensitivity, and when you move an inch, your character spins 40,000 times. And it's something else. I don't know what's going on. Madness. But some of the stuff they made, you know, No One Lives Forever, another classic one there. The old school Alien vs Predator stuff. Really, really good. People loved that. People talk a lot about Heretic, don't they? A lot of people like Heretic, cool game. But it's just... I feel like the people who were at Monolith when they made these strives forward in the first-person shooters, I don't think they're there anymore. I think they've moved on to other pastures. And I've looked into who the directors of these games were and who the gameplay designers were and where they are now, and it seems like the majority of them are over in different studios doing different things, and you can hardly blame them. You know, it's been 10, 20 years from when they made those games. Nobody wants to do the same thing forever. But I do miss them. And look, there you go. Every time we get one of those crazy stutters, guys, take a drink. If you're wanting to do the Seraphim 17 drinking game, there's your game right there. Every micro, massive stutter, boom, take a shot. And it's the same with Raven. I wish COD would die so that Raven could get released and they could do cool things again. You know? Like, I'd love to see what Respawn are doing. I know Apex is super popular and they're gonna drive that into the ground because why would you not? It's your cash cow now, but I don't want to see them making fucking Star Wars games, dude. I don't want to see them making third-person action games that aren't very good, that everybody sucks their dick because it's like bootleg, cheesy, easy Dark Souls clones. I don't want that. I want them to make shooters. I want them to innovate like they did with COD, like they did with Titanfall. I want them to show me what is next in this arena. Because can you honestly say what's the most interesting thing in first-person shooters recently that's new? Because you can't say Doom Eternal, because Doom Eternal just took 2016 and turned it into Quake. You know, you can't say, like, I mean, I suppose you could say Battle Royale, but that's been around since the bloody DayZ days, you know, and that's just an armor mod, isn't it? The PUBGs, the H1Z1s, I mean, there's been a million of those. Oh, and we've got more scrubbers now, guys. Be very careful as you move forward. I've turned to this gun because I want to hip fire, and I just accidentally tweaked. I tweaked and flicked onto Alma, poor lass. Put a couple bullets in her emaciated anus, and now we can continue onwards. And every time in the top left, guys, when you see it say saving content, that is your checkpoint. So when you see that, that is where you retry for when you die, if you do die. And I don't think you should... you might not have to shoot him, but I shoot him anyway, because fuck these guys, dude. Creepy scrubbers. Beautiful enemy, though. You know, when you think of an enemy, I remember these enemies because I remember how unsettling they were and how fast they were and how creepy they were. Great enemy design. And all it does is it turns up, it runs on walls, it puts pressure on you, it panics you. And it's absolutely great at that job. It's essentially an assassin, but it's nowhere near as elegant. That's dirty, I don't like that. Not a big fan of the old spawning behind you when you go through a doorway, so they come and bum rush you when you're on an objective. That's just cheesy. And here's the shotgun being actually kind of good. So, as much as I don't like the shotgun and how I think it sounds flat and I think its impact is soft and soggy and trash, it can be good. But look at my life. Luckily, no one's going to shoot me here because when they throw the scrubbers at you, they do not throw anybody with ballistics. If they did scrubbers and ballistics like they do in that one fight later on where they're infighting, that could be really interesting. But as much as this game is difficult, it isn't going to push you the way that some games would. Because let's face it, the hardest parts of games are when the expectation of the player exceed the normal threshold. Like, always the most difficult fights are the ones where they put enemies together that should never be together. You know, that's the reason why you generate that difficulty, because these are enemies that do not complement each other. They just don't. If anything, they hurt the core design, and they do things that sync up in such a way that the game is just not really fair. It's not as nuanced and balanced as it was, and that's where your difficulty comes from a lot of the time. Like, look at Nietzsche and Ishtaros in Ninja Gaiden Black. Those are two enemies that if they sync up in a certain type of manner, it's very difficult to do anything about it. And it's very difficult to get your opening that you normally would because they've synced up in such a way that you're just kind of screwed. This is an interesting one. I don't know if he's cutscene or if he's just meant to scare you, but right now I'm kind of tentative because if he comes back, he's going to get the shotgun. He's going to get the boomstick. That one. I can hear him, he's there. Audio in this game is really helpful. I don't know how any of that happened, but it actually helped me because this QTE, if you win it, enables you to take less damage. Like, this is kind of sloppy right now. I'm just running around with a shotgun, and the reason this is so sloppy is because I didn't die. It's a one and done sequence. There's always a part of me as well that's a bit conscious about those moments, but I like them now. I've grown to understand YouTube and the player base to an extent where I feel like when you have a moment in a walkthrough where you aren't perfect, it can make it easier to relate to. When you see me make mistakes, it proves that, you know, this is not a god run. This is not me. I'm not a machine. I don't play every game at the highest level on my first attempt. And I want that to come across as much as I want the gameplay to be fun to watch, and I want you to watch it and think, wow, that was cool, you know, that was a cool moment. Like, I'm not the best gamer. I've never been that, and I never will be that. I don't want to be that, you know. I just want to be the best me, if I can. And these little shits, they will test your aim, they will test your patience, because they're a nightmare. Luckily, that mantle there, you see that? It's a trap. Because they have to mantle in such a way, and because they keep prioritizing that one side, I can just wait for them to go into that animation and they're dead. It's one of those things that you learn when you play games enough, you know? And everybody knows that. If you can get an enemy to do a canned animation, and it'll slow them down, you're gonna do it, you're gonna use it. That was the reason why the chainsaw wasn't working in Doom Eternal. Because when you went to chainsaw people that were doing a transitional environmental movement, it turned off their chainsaw ability. So the reason that you were getting no target selected was because the enemy was mantling, and they wouldn't let you chainsaw them when they mantle. Because when you did do that, sometimes it warped you into the geometry. And people like to just say, oh, the chainsaw's garbage, it doesn't work, Doom Eternal's a bad game, this and that. When in reality, the reason they did that is because it was breaking the game. And now, it's hurting the gameplay. So they've had to go in there and tweak it and fix it, and hopefully it's fixed. Doom Eternal's going to be one of the next projects you see on the channel, guys. I really wanted to cover it with the DLC, but I ended up getting shafted again. There's something to do with me and Doom Eternal. We can never ever sync up on release dates. I'm doomed to play that game later than I should. And I hope you're looking forward to it, because I think it's one of the most important games that's been made in the last 10 years, probably. But hit the elevator here, and we can go up. You'll notice every time I do an elevator, guys, when I press the button, there's a transition to the end of the elevator. I feel like you spend enough time in elevators in your own game to watch me sit in them. And it just makes the video a bit quicker. But here we go, guys. This is when shit gets interesting. So I will always remember this room, because for some reason I have embedded an anxiety towards it in my brain that does not need to exist. And I don't know if you do the same thing, guys. I remember rooms that I walked into when I first played a game where I thought, oh my god, look at this. This is going to kick off, this might be difficult, I'm nervous now. And this fight is easy. This fight's not even remotely difficult. I've never struggled with this fight, I don't struggle in this video. This is a very simple fight. If anything, it's a fun fight. But for some reason, I remember this like it's a bad fight that I'm going to struggle with, and yet I never have. And this is the introduction of the replica. The infamous replica soldiers. Paxton Fettle's psychic army, right? And these guys are the best. I love these dudes. This is fear when these dudes turn up. The problem, do you see those squares in the ground? Those squares in the ground are going to bring up these pods, and these pods are going to open, and then the soldiers are going to have an animation climbing out. When they're doing that, you can kill them. So if you know the pods order when they pop up, you can literally shoot them like fish in a barrel. And I kept this cutscene in here so that I could talk about this. And it builds tension really well. See the music building? The guy talking, you can obviously tell it's going to kick off, you just don't know when. This is a wonderful sense of provoking the player to get a desired response. And I think they did a great job here, because you're chomping at the bit, you want to go, you want to fight, you're like, come on, I want to do this. But they don't. They keep leading you on. It's a wonderful piece of delivery of narrative and player expectation. Because you know it's going to kick off, you just don't know when. It's the Hitchcockian bomb under the table. It's superb. And now, as soon as the checkpoint procs, you know you're going to have to fight. Because that's the reality, isn't it? That's where the smoke and the mirrors can never, ever deceive. You know the moment that checkpoint procs, you're going to have to do something. Because that's just video games. That's a shotgunner as well. Did you see him, Sugar Puff Man? That dude is alive. Shoot him in the balls. The pods go down, the next set of pods come up, and then you spawn kill them as well. And these are the dudes. These are the quintessential fear troopers. These are the guys you were killing for the majority of the first game. These are the ones that give you the nostalgia. They don't quite look the same, but they sound the same, which I approve of. And they take cover, they do intelligent things, they run away when they need to, they throw grenades. And look at the checkpoint there, you didn't need that checkpoint. This could have easily have been like 3 or 4 fights in a row with no checkpoint. And you don't often see me say stuff like that. I like checkpoints, but this is one of those sequences that... There's a sequence later on where you're on this bridge. You're on this... I say it's a bridge, it's a moving platform. It's this connected train of moving platforms moving to the end of the game. And they make you fight a bunch of dudes in close proximity that are all really strong and really dangerous. And there's no checkpoints. And I have no idea how I did it on one attempt, because it goes on for forever. And it's really dangerous. The whole fucking thing is super dangerous. That's an area that could have done with another checkpoint. This is an area that didn't need it. Like, I've not even been hit. And if I have been hit, I'm a giant liar. But you know what I mean? Like, I'm wrecking these enemies. See then? That's the problem with the shotgun. That's the reason why the shotgun sucks ass. If you didn't know, now you know. The shotgun is terrible. It's just completely unacceptable. And I think that this is the final wave, right? That electricity effect they just did then, that really reminds me of Fear. There's something about that electricity effect. Because you used to see it, didn't you? You know when you throw the grenade in slow motion and it does that wonderful, like, sonic boom ripple? It reminds me of hitting the computers and the phones and setting off all that shit. But anyhow, the pods fall down. Then you can go into here. And be really careful, guys. All of these pods now that have been in the level populated are going to start to open and release enemies. And when they do so, it's going to stutter the game up. And you're going to get into a spot like this where your game's stuttering, you're in the middle of 3 dudes, he has a shotgun, that's instant death right now. If he hits me with that, you're done, it's over. And like, there's a lot of replicas knocking around, and we're now using the new gun here. Which, I think this is maybe a Heckler & Koch. Is it the XM8? I think it's like a derivative of the XM platform. I'm not entirely certain. It does look like it's got that translucent clip, you know, from the SIG. Like the SIG 5.5 series. He has a shotgun as well. That guy has a shotgun too. These guys have to die. If they don't die, you're done. If they get a shot off, you're done. Like, it's really scary, this fight. You don't realise how dangerous this fight is until they kill you. Because you're just one shot away from being put down. And I love this area because of the rotating, like, klaxon, the siren that's spreading the orange hue everywhere. It reminds me of the blast furnace at the end of Terminator 2. Big fan of that motif. So that guy has a shotgun too, he needs to die. You'll notice that I reload a lot, guys. I do have reload-itis, but fundamentally, I always want to have a full clip when I get into a gunfight, just so that I have as many opportunities to win. And I don't mind reloading, I'm patient. That's the auto-shotty. This is actually pretty good, this. It's still a terrible shotgun, and it's frustrating to use with one of the weirdest looking iron sights you'll see. But it can put out so much stun that it becomes useful from flinch alone. And especially if you use it from the hip too. And you'll notice the music's gone quiet again. Really building on the atmospherics here. You've just got the sound of the level. The sound of this rotary pod conveyor belt thing. I don't know what you would call that, you know, where they hang from the roof of it. It's obviously some kind... Oh, I remember this fight. This is difficult. So this is a bunch of set spawns, and they've all got the potential to really, really decimate you. That guy's a shotgunner. That guy's also a shotgunner. Giving the shotgunner a taste of his own. I don't know why he was stood there then. That was silly. That guy has a shotgun. Make sure he doesn't fire. I like this fight, though, because you can just wreck shop. And you might watch that and think, Chris, why is the shotgun bad? It doesn't look bad. It's because you haven't played Field 1. When you play Field 1, dude, the shotgun, it just spoils you. It's superb. It's such a fun-feeling shotgun. Everything about the shotgun in the first game is absolutely exceptional. I don't know how they messed it up, personally. And if anybody has any information about that, I'd love to know. Maybe they thought it was too overpowered and they wanted to balance it, but hell, you can go slow motion. Slow motion is overpowered. They didn't get rid of that. You know, they just kind of maintained. This is interesting too. The telegraphing and the signposting on where you're supposed to go in this game, that's where you need to go, that door there. It's one of those where it doesn't populate your HUD until you've already found it, which I think is an interesting time machine into when games were a little bit more cryptic and you had to do a little bit more of the legwork. Going up to doorways to see if you can touch them and things, see if you can press buttons. Do you remember, guys, walking up to textures that look like buttons and switches and see if you can touch them and then turning out to just be details on the texture? I feel like that's the kind of thing. New gamers, the new generation of game players who are growing up with the modern conventions, they're not going to have to ever do that. They're never going to have to remember that because they weren't there. And maybe that's for the best, you know? The amount of time you spent looking for some random pixel that looked different, that might be interactable. That was a wonderful stutter, wasn't it? Mid-grenade throw, there was another one. The game's just shitting the bed right now. And the problem with all the particles and the dust and the smoke is that as much as you can see the enemies in it, thanks to the way the graphics are rendered, it gives the enemies the advantage because they know exactly where you are. And it's one of the things that really bugs me in modern games. You know, when something blows up and there's smoke and fog of war and everything, and then the AI is just shitting on you. Oh, they know exactly where you are. Like, oh, thanks, that's great. Like, I feel like the AI either doesn't get tested when you do things like that, or they go too far the other way, don't they? Like, how many games do you know where when you throw a smoke grenade, the enemies just stand there and they're not even turned on? So you can just run past them and they don't react or do anything. There has to be a middle ground, doesn't there, between turn the AIs off by throwing one bomb to, oh, we know exactly where he is, look at him just there. Like that wall in Total Recall where they can see your bone structure and they can see if you're carrying any weapons. Which was painfully rotoscoped by the people that did it back in the 80s. Jesus Christ. Can you imagine how long that must have taken? I hope they got paid a lot of money. Because it's an effect that looks really good too. But pushing forward here, you can hear there's some fighting going on between the subjects and the replica soldiers. The replicas are just slaying everything, I think. I can't quite remember the narrative reason for that, because it's been a long time since I knew the story of this game. I think they just kind of turned them on, didn't they? Because wasn't it Paxton Fettel was the only guy that could control them? And then I think maybe in this one, maybe Alma's turned them on to try and add to the chaos. Because you've got the Armacan guys from Genevieve Armistead, or whatever she's called, Armitage, I forget. And she's trying to clean everything up. Because they want to contain her, don't they? They want to contain Alma. This is an interesting little enemy locker over there. If you throw a grenade at that and you time it right, you can probably kill every single one of those people as that door opens. This is what I'm talking about, guys. You know when I talked about the emergent souls and being able to set up for the fights and do lots of damage? If you know the timing on that door, you can throw a grenade over there. A really skillfully placed grenade with a decent amount of cook on it. That's the end of the fight. This is the type of stuff that I love. I love the idea of rewarding a player who learns my game. If I was ever to make a shooter, guys, I would have probably maybe a 50-50 mix of that. I would have a lot of the creative encounters to be able to be completely decimated with insight, foresight, and just skill and knowledge. And then I would have other ones where they were intentional arenas where you kind of couldn't do that. Because you don't want every fight to be skippable and to be neutralized really quickly, because then you have yourself a boring game. You want a nice mix of things, you know? And I think giving them a nice mix between the, oh, here we go, guys, it's kicking off, this is a big one, and, ooh, I know exactly what to do to get to the core of this. I think that's a nice balance to tread. And I think that's what Doom Eternal's DLC is getting criticised for, isn't it? A lot of the arenas are kind of boring, and a lot of the like, intermediary fights, the palette cleansers, those fights are an odd choice of enemies, and all the good players are like, what the fuck is this? And the reason for that is because the Ancient Gods Part 1 was just balls-to-the-wall arenas every room. And when you have arenas every room, you're going to get your player base used to having to fight tooth and claw through every single environment. And I don't necessarily agree with that, even though I did really like the Ancient Gods Part 1. And I don't agree with them nerfing it. I don't think it needed nerfing. Especially when Darkside Phil hadn't played it. All I want to do is to watch Phil get shit on in the Atlantica level. Like, I would love to see him just get absolutely devastated. But he's a giant coward and would never play it, so, you know. That's just what it is. So this room. You'll notice there was a crossfade there, guys. I ran around this room looking for ammo to see what was going on. Turns out, there's a huge fight that kicks off in here when you press that button, and I didn't press the button. So I trimmed myself out running around picking shit up. I went immediately to the button, and every time we interact with something, it's going to set off a sequence of spawning replicas, and then the final wave is the first mech of the game. So the mechs in this game can be killed with almost any weapon. Obviously explosives work wonders, and any kind of big gun that you can use works wonders, but you can hit them with anything, they will die. And you can stun them with grenades if you use the shot grenades, and I absolutely recommend you do. Oof, that was beautiful. That right there is what this gun should do every single time you point it at people at that range. And that is the reason why this gun is not as good as it was in Fear 1. But this particular spawn of this robot is a one attempter again. If I'd have died here, guys, I would have absolutely humiliated this dude. But I didn't have my toggle between grenades, and I didn't do enough damage on his spawn to do that. So instead, I'm going to put him down with bullets. But watch how much damage he does when he hits you. This thing, it kills you so fast. If you get hit flush, good luck. And I'm using the shotgun here, and my logic is shotguns are usually powerful, even though this is not the range. But I'm using it because I don't like it, and I don't mind running out of ammo. And then I kind of second guess myself, and I put the assault rifle on, and once again I'm using this because I don't like it. I used to love this gun on console, but on PC, It just limits my visibility too much. And this guy even hits you when you're in cover too. But learn from this, ladies and gentlemen. Swap your grenade type, put your shock on, hit him with shock, go up to him with the automatic shotgun, hit the living shit out of him, like, hit him with a bunch of grenades, shock him again, shoot him, and he'll go down super quick. He won't even get a chance to shoot. But there he goes. Easy peasy, get your armor back. There's plenty of resources in this room. Get your grenades back. And for the love of God, bind changing grenades, because changing grenades is so useful. Look at all those shot grenades. 4 shot grenades in that case. Use them, guys. And right there was the transition of me going in the menu, swapping the binding, and messing with the change grenade button. So now, guys, I have the ability to do that. It's late than it should be, but I went in. Look at them all. They're everywhere, dude. The game is telling you, use shot grenades. Listen to the game. And this is one of the areas where this game is actually a lot less difficult than you think. Because if you use the resources that they give you to the amount that they give you, it's insane. Can you imagine a game on its hardest difficulty giving you 8 guaranteed stuns on a mini-boss? There's no mini-boss in the history of mini-bosses that can survive that. And that's what they did. He kills you quick, but you can completely lock him down. And that is generous, really generous, and it's good design. Me personally, I wouldn't have given you that many grenades. Not nowhere near that many grenades. I would have taken those stacks of 4 down to 1. Then again, I think this game could have had a harder difficulty. It could have had an even crazier difficulty, like Point Man difficulty, you know? It could have got really, really crazy. But I would have made it so that the enemies can't hit you when they flinch, and I would have also made them way less tankier. I would have turned it into, they put you down super quick, but they don't react quite as fast, and you put them down super quick. So it's all about just neutralizing everybody quickly, and if you don't, you're dead. I think that could have been super interesting. There she is, Genevieve Aristide. That's how they say her name. She's from the first game, right? I remember her. She's the person that you hear on the telephones. But there's this interesting warehouse, and this warehouse reminds me of the start of Extraction Point, which is one of the standalone DLCs for the original Fear. However, it isn't designed by Monolith, and in my opinion, it doesn't count. And I was having a conversation on my stream with Khan. Apparently, there's this resurgence of love for Extraction Point that really didn't exist when it came out. Extraction Point is a nice distraction, but it's not a good Fear. It's got some good combat, it's got the mechanics, but it doesn't have the soul. And that's the problem. You know, that's the same problem with the Perseus Mandate. Perseus Mandate has got it's got all the fundamentals that you need for Fear, but it doesn't have the love and the heart that the Fear game had. And this game has a lot of the love and a lot of the heart and a lot of the fundamentals, but they messed up things they shouldn't have messed up. They changed things they shouldn't have changed. This game there's a plane coming over here. Wonderful piece of like dramatic narrative happening, showing you just how messed up the world is at this moment. This growing apocalypse now that Alma has been released and everything. Pretty crazy. I love that animation too. That mantle animation. Oh, it's introducing ghosts as well. So this is kind of interesting, this. In the first Fear, there were sequences where these black, like, cephalic phantoms attacked you. And you could kill them in one bullet or something. You took them down very fast. And every so often they would populate and attack you, and it was these moments where that's all you'd see. There would be spooky moments where spooky ghosts attacked you, and you just had to deal with them. In this game, they're white. They're white phantasms, and they go down really quickly, and they barely do any damage. And it's like, I don't get it. I don't really get it in this one. They tried to take away the damage that they did to you, because on Extreme, those ghostly spectres in the first game, they can fuck you up. You get hit by 2 of those that you don't see, you're dead. It's crazy hard. But in this game, I don't even notice these stupid ghosts. They all hit me, they like gangbang me, and I'm fine. It's really weird. I don't understand it, but we are coming up on one of the most interesting enemies in any game. I love this crazy marionette guy coming up. I don't know his name, I don't remember his name, it's been a long time. All I know is that he's this shuffling, bumbling, homeless dude who's got these wonderful threads that lead to these corpses, and he reanimates them. And it's just such a creative dude. And he does this screech. This is him here. See him? He moves in such a weird way. He's all loosey-goosey and it's odd. And he reanimates these soldiers and they move odd as well. And you can see these threads, these wonderful life threads that he's using to control these people. And he's holding a briefcase too. He's like a diplomat. He's this dead, bitter diplomat that turns up and I love him. And he's tanky too. He's a really beefy guy. But this enemy, I've never died to it, I don't think. I don't even know if you can. It's such a weird thing. But creatively, this is the coolest dude. I love everything about this. It makes me think of the marionettes and the fetishes from Devil May Cry. You know, it makes me think of the infectors from Dead Space. And he's dead. That was it. Like, what did he even do? I don't know. Maybe he should get a better job. Maybe he should be doing something else. But creatively, that guy is sick. And I think you see 3 of those in the whole game. That enemy right there, conceptually, is cooler than probably anything in first-person shooters in the last 5 years. And it's a throwaway enemy you barely see. That's one of the ghosts, by the way. See that? It just kind of flew past me and didn't do anything. I really like the street sequences in this game, too. I think they've aged really well visually. I love how they look. And there's some really fun sequences in them as too. It's not all just gunfights, gunfights, gunfights. There's these moments of the quiet calm. Every so often giving you just this sense of building this established picture of what the world is, the current world state. And it's really well done too. The only issue I have with it is there's a lot of crooks and crannies and you find yourself looking for stuff. That ghost right there was actually showing me the way forward instead of being an enemy, which is an interesting piece of game design to help the player. I'm telling you boys, Monolith, even bad Monolith is good Monolith, you know? And here, look, see how much damage that guy did? He did like 1/20th of my life. Look at this. It's weird, right? Do you think that's weird? I think that's weird. I'm not complaining because I feel like I don't really want to die to these weird specters that are stupid. But why put them in the game if they're just scenery, you know? Scenery that's got baby teeth. It just feels weird. And all you do is shoot them once and they go away. And you can even punch them. And if I wanted this guy to be a lot cleaner, I would have restarted then and taken no damage, but I just think, what's the point, you know? It's such a weird choice. And we've got robots turning up as well. I love that. That's the wheel from the plane that went over, I think. Just come through the roof there and wrecked everything. But more vents. A big old homage to the original Fear. There's a lot of ventilation, navigation in that game. And we're moving towards the Wade Elementary, which is one of the best levels in the game. It's a level that this game got very well complimented on. Because it's a scary, spooky level. And this was kind of the time, wasn't it, with scary, spooky levels when you think about it. You've got the elementary school in this game. You've got the nursery in Dead Space 2. This is a moment where we were definitely going into those places and making players very uncomfortable. And I appreciate it a lot because Dead Space 2 is a much better game than this. But this game is no slouch either. And compared to the games we're getting now, like, I'm so happy that I can come back to Fear 2 without the heartbreak it originally caused me. And I say heartbreak, I still liked it, but I didn't like it like I liked Fear 1. You know, Fear 1 to me is... There's a list somewhere of shooters that you just can't touch, and Fear's on that list. And it's a very privileged list, and it's a list that is subjective, and it's a list that might not make any sense to you, but it makes a whole lot of sense to me. So we just heard there's somebody else here shooting a gun. Look at the damage he just did, dude. Oh no, it was him. Where did you come from? Where did you go? And there is a... Oh my goodness. Look how dangerous this is, dude, when they're all around you. So get the health pack back. There was a part of me that was actually contemplating not using the med packs. Because I was thinking, oh, what can I do to make this more interesting, you know? I'm really glad I didn't do that, because I feel like that would have just been really tedious later on. Because it doesn't look like it right now, guys. This doesn't look that difficult, does it? Just then was the first time I've been in danger in a while. But the reason it doesn't look too difficult is because at this moment in time, I'm really cranked. I'm super tuned in, you know? As soon as I see them, I'm putting them down and I'm getting them killed and it's all going fine. But the enemies aren't as beefy as they're going to be later on. They're still kind of beefy. But later on, they really feel beefy. And I don't even think they change. I don't think they change that much. But the perception of how beefy they are gets kind of obnoxious. And I already felt that they were too beefy right now. Like, look at this. These guys are taking way too much for my tastes. But when you get to the later sequences, and everybody takes the same damage as the shotgunner guy, everyone's wearing his sugar puff armor, yeah, you definitely start to think that the tides are turning and they're not in your favour. I should say too, guys, I do activate slow-mo in this run. You're probably all aghast now and turning the video off and immediately disliking. I did it by accident and I had to unbind it, and I don't know if it's already happened. You might have seen it. There's a moment where I activate it outside of a gunfight and I turn it off, and then it never happens again because I completely unmap it. And you'll see there's a point in the video where it says press unbound to use slow-mo, and I completely wiped it off so I didn't do it again. But it did not get activated in any fights, and that's what kind of matters in my opinion. It's the fights that matter. I think we're coming up on the first robot part as well. The first robot part is really easy too. It's just kind of a narrative power fantasy. I'm telling you though, guys, the robot sequences have aged the worst. I can't imagine liking them, but I know I did, because when I first played it back at launch, I had a good time. But when I came back, I was real close to not even continuing to record, because I just didn't want to do it. And I don't know if you've ever done that, guys. Are you a walkthrough maker? Do you do playthroughs? Have you ever made a project where you've recorded it for an hour or two, and you get to a sequence where you're just like, I really don't want to do this. And unfortunately you don't have level select, so you've got to do it. I might have been able to get a trainer, put a trainer on and just run through the game with invincibility on or something. But I didn't really want to do that. I was just in that moment of, do I really want to do this? Do I want to commit to this? And I'm super glad that I did, because this game gets hard at the end. This game gets real hard. I like the hit marker too, I haven't mentioned that. This game is such a love child of the changing of the guard. Like, at this point, Call of Duty is king. At this point, Halo is also really strong. Probably not quite king, but the sensibilities of both Halo and Call of Duty can be seen in this. And Monolith have been around before those were even a thing. Like, when Monolith were doing shooters, there were no Halo, there was no COD. And it's so interesting to see these, I'm not going to call them the forefathers, but they were definitely there. These people that kept the torch burning for this genre. Oh, by the way, you want to use your shock grenade on this guy and shoot the shit out of him. Because when he's shocked, he can't fire back. And all you do, you shock, you wait for the stun, you shoot. And it's very simple. The only problem is the smoke. The smoke makes this kind of obnoxious. And there he goes. See how powerful those grenades are, guys? That was an even bigger robot than the first robot we killed. That's the robot you're going to ride soon. It's like a super mech, that one. And they still go down really quickly because the balance is... It's almost borderline too strong for the player. Like, this is treading into Quantum Break territory where you're so capable, it's kind of insane. And it's just because the grenades are so strong. So if you want an even harder time, guys, no grenades. You do this no grenades, you're going to have a much harder time, I can guarantee that. Still doable though, but much harder time. Also, something worth mentioning here, I'm going to carry this rocket launcher for the rest of the game pretty much, outside of a couple of moments. And I don't recommend that you do it all that much, but if you do, every time you come up against anybody big, any heavies, any tanks, any mechs, you can kill them pretty much immediately. And it's one of the best things about carrying a weapon through a game. And I really respect any game that lets you do that. If you let me carry your explosive through the whole game and I can use it sparingly to give myself it whenever I need it, I will love you forever. And Fear 2 lets you do that, ladies and gentlemen, so huge props to this game for that. Gotta be careful here too, because there's a lot of electricity. They want you to use the ladder to my left and step on these plates and things and don't go in the water. If you go in the water, you take a lot of damage, so be very careful. But as I was saying, guys, this game it's monkey see, monkey do. And I know that can sometimes sound kind of offensive, but it's not meant to. It's meant to just be the human nature of when you see something cool and you see something new, you are influenced by it, and thus you use it in what you're doing creatively. And this game's no different. The hit markers in this are directly related to the rise of hit markers thanks to games like Call of Duty and all the other games that were influenced and used them. So this game has hit markers, and it's a better game for it, you know? I love the fact it's got hit markers. Such a cool touch. It makes it more satisfying. It tells you when you're hitting. It tells you when you're connecting. It gives you a tangible connection to the world. And I love that. I really love that. Look at the red dots and the optics. 1000% influenced by the rise of the military shooter. I really wish there were different versions of the guns, because I'd love to get that assault rifle with the same reflex scope that the submachine gun has, and then I think the rifle was really good because I'd use it exclusively because it's just a stronger version of the gun. But you can't, you know, it doesn't have that flexibility. The game only has iron sights on guns that don't have scopes. So the shotgun has an iron, you know, the pistol has an iron, and they're not necessarily great irons, but they're irons. So you can never get an iron version of a gun you like that has an optic, and vice versa. And these are the teething problems that Call of Duty, because there's a nice wonderful stutter, thanks for that. Like, you know, COD started with this, so they gave you a gradation. Here's an AK with an ACOG. Here's an AK with a red dot. Here's an AK with an iron sight. Pick which one you want. This game didn't have that, you know. This game had a toolbox, and each of the tools covered a different range. And that's what they wanted to do. Like, look at that right there. That's an instance of the shotgun. It isn't gory and being awesome, but it's being effective. So as much as it's easy to shit on the shotgun, the auto shotgun is way better. But here we go, boys and girls. You ready for some hit scan snipers? This is a scary moment. Whenever you have to counter snipe. There he was. Did you see him? I know I bloody didn't. Boom. See you later, friend. Look at the HP though. Did you see that? Whenever you're in critical HP, you do regenerate a little bit. Just a little bit to get you back out of the swelling screen effect. And that's a nice touch. They didn't have to do that. But now we get to counter snipe without slow motion, which is a pain in the ass. Because these snipers react really quick. And when they hit you, they do an absurd amount of damage. So we want to try and put them out as quickly as we can. If you hit them in center mass with this rifle, because it's anti-material, because it's essentially a bootleg 50 cal, it will kill them. I love that effect then as well. See those breeze blocks getting knocked off the top? The cinder blocks, as some people say. Just falling off the top there of the wall. What a beautiful touch. There's another checkpoint. Somebody's talking to my right. Am I getting flipped? The wall just went through. Time to shoot that man. Here he comes. We got a shotgunner and a random dude. See that just then? That's the shotgun being real good. Hit that guy from this distance and completely jibbed him. Mulched him. Beautiful range for the shotgun there. This part is hard though. This is the first part of the game where I died a few times outside of, like, there's been gunfights where I've died and I've gone, okay, I've got to take that a bit slower or I've got to do a little different. This was one where I died a handful of times because I kept getting hit by snipers. So you've got to really keep your head on a swivel on this. Luckily, their positioning is the same every time, and this is where having the rocket launcher that we carried here pays off, because you don't even have to pick that one up. And what happens is, because we're carrying it, we can kill that NPC and then replenish our rockets and constantly have rockets. But I did die, guys, so this is a second spawn here. The NPC blows up and then the people come out of the back of it. So I threw a grenade then to kill the people coming out of the back, and now I'm shooting all the snipers because I've died here, I know where they are. And you've got to be really careful, because if you get hit twice, you're dead. And you're also going to get rushed by replicas a little bit. They push up onto your level, so you want to take these guys out too. And I'm making this look really easy, hitting moving targets without slow-mo, but if you've played Fear, you'll know yourself. Using this game without slow motion can make the shooting feel really fast and really hard to do. And I'm no different, guys. Luckily, this project is aim training, you know. If I can fight against aimbots that are running around shooting me at the same time, and I'm tracking with them on a sensitivity that's not quite my own, it's going to build my brain's ability to understand distance and dots and pixels, and it's going to build that wonderful repertoire of mouse skills that I'm looking forward to crafting. So as much as this is a project for you guys to watch and get nostalgic over Fear 2 if you like it, or just to watch me do something kind of silly in a video game, or just listen to my voice while you grind something in a game, at the same time I want to get something back from it, you know. I don't want to get back what I put in. And in this particular game, I'm hopefully going to get my hand on the mouse and get into some awkward positions that are going to make me better. That's the goal, or it should be anyway. Music right now is kicking off. It's interesting, isn't it, how you remember games? Because I remember playing this on 360 and trying to get all the achievements and having to play that horrible multiplayer. And it's funny when you see people that are nostalgic over a multiplayer that you thought was horrible. Like Singularity. There's a lot of people on my Singularity. I say a lot of people. I think I saw one comment, but I'm going to say a lot of people because it's always nice to inflate one's sense of self. But I saw a guy. You know, we're best friends, me and this guy. I wrote it. It's on my alt account. But all the all the strange platitudes of discussion that I use aside, I saw one comment on my Singularity video of somebody who said that they really liked the multiplayer and they missed it. Which I think is awesome to get nostalgic over something you enjoyed. But the multiplayer in Singularity was 30 FPS, and it was fucking awful. So, as much as I'm glad that guy had a good time, and I wish he could go back and have more good times with the multiplayer he really liked, I thought Singularity's multiplayer was hot dog shit. And I would never want it back, you know? Like, to me, my nostalgia for that game is entirely of the campaign, and of that time in video games. And there's a couple of other games that I'm interested to looking into if I can get them to run on PC, which could make for interesting projects. Games that got critiqued a lot when they came out, and I'd like to go back to them, revisit them, and share them on the channel. The first one is Clive Barker's Jericho, which was a game I myself took the piss out of when it first came out as well, because I didn't know who... I knew Clive Barker did Hellraiser, but I didn't know anything about him. And when I played the demo, it was just a really brown, really awkward, not very good game. And then I ended up playing it a couple of years later, and I really liked it. I thought it was kind of... It had some really, really cool fiction and narrative, and there was some interesting mechanics, and it was super brown, and it was super beige, and it was super... You know, visually it didn't have some of the best things it needed, but I grew to enjoy the game, and I got all the achievements, and the achievements were quite easy, so that was cool. And by the end of it, I went from being a Clive Barker's Jericho naysayer into somebody that quite liked the game. Oh, this is a robot here. So this is the first time you use the robot, this, ladies and gentlemen. And this is a very simple sequence of you shitting on people with the power armor. But I'm not going to do these sequences. They take too long and they're boring and I don't like them. So I've just trimmed them out. If you want to see those moments, guys, there's videos all over YouTube. You're in a big robot. The screen's super shaky and staticky. And it's just... The mouse sensitivity is 9,000 times wrong. And it's not fun. So, yeah. Unfortunately... And when you try and do those sequences on foot, they're really, really difficult because the rocket launcher guys are all perfect aim hit scan bastards. So they direct impact you with rockets. It's really nasty. I think you can do them though, but oh, I got stuck here too. This was fun. Hello, Mr. There we go. Mr. Video Game, can you let me go, please? But yeah, Clive Barker's Jericho is one I'd like to try, but the PC port is apparently absolutely diabolically bad. So if I can make that tenable, I'll see what I can do, ladies and gentlemen, and we'll share that conversation. And then the other one is a game that I played the demo for on the 360, and I thought it was hot garbage. It was like everything wrong with shooters, and it had such a cool idea, but it was made by a team that just didn't quite get it. And it's the same thing that I feel when I talk about Rebellion. You know, it's the same thing I feel when I talk about the devs that just aren't quite AAA. You know, the devs that are making good games, but you can tell that they're not the highest caliber, and there's parts of them that could easily be fixed in my mind, but they never fix them because they're making the game they want, and the game they want isn't the game I want. So, it's called Legendary, and you might have played it, you might not have played it. It was this game where you play as like an elite group of people that are saving history from all these crazy mythological creatures or something, and the demo has you taking down a griffin. I think it's either a griffin or it's some kind of a manticore. I don't really know what it was. I can't remember, but it's a big winged lion. I think that's a griffin, right? This is more scripting as well here, guys. So put up with Alma doing tomfoolery. And it was a game where, when you played it, it just didn't feel good. It didn't feel good. It came out at a time where shooters were starting to feel really, really solid, and they were doing really great things. So it had a decent production value, it had a really, really good idea, and then you played it and it was just kind of janky and goofy and not very fun, and I thought it was horrible, and I mocked it, and I played the demo, and I never bought it. However, now, I'm interested in going back to it and checking it out and seeing if it is as bad as I thought it was, and if it's redeemable on PC. And it could be something interesting to make, because it's one of those shooters that was just... Like, does anybody remember Shell Shock? That was a terrible game. Shell Shock, I think it was called Shell Shock 2, like fucking Vietnam or something. That was terrible. I played it for the achievements and nothing else. It was a horrible game. It just wasn't good, you know? It made Clive Barker's Jericho look like COD 4. Like, it was just an average game. And then you have things like Time Shift. I think Time Shift's a really good game, but the PC port for that is kind of awkward to get working, so that's why you haven't seen it if you're wondering. This is interesting too as we go into the school. This level here, ladies and gentlemen, is one of the best levels in the game for atmosphere. It's got some really, really interesting stuff going on. It's got a lot of great attention to detail, and that right there I thought was absolutely hilarious, so I kept it in the video. If you let that go before it finishes the animation, even if it's completely propped, it just flops back down. I thought it was so perfect that I had to keep it. But this part is awesome. There's some really cool fights coming up here. Some cool fights. We get the penetrator that's called the Hammerhead in this game, and I don't think it's half as good as it used to be. We take on the first heavy of the game, a true heavy, using a penetrator, even though they're nowhere near as dangerous or scary as they were in Fear 1. And we also get to take on another one of those crazy marionette puppet master guys, so that's kind of sick. And I will not hurt my fellow classmates. It is always unsettling when it's on a chalkboard. But there's an interesting grace to this level, and there's an interesting pacing, and the level design is stellar. The atmospherics... Like, if it wasn't for the fact that you people are here to listen to me talk, or the people that like my channel are, I would have probably had this entire sequence be silence, just so that you can get into it and understand just the feeling of it. It's such a cool segment. It's got some nice storytelling, it's got some nice audio design, the visuals are superb. Even the set dressing, the things they choose to put in the environment are so spot on. And here is the guy playing a piano. I'm going to throw a bunch of sticky bombs, and then I'm going to shoot a full clip into his body, and then he's going to run away. I tried a few damage setups here to see what hurt him the most, and surprisingly enough, he's just really beefy. But those proxy bombs, if you can stick him with the proxy bombs, the direct impact might be an even better solution. But we took him out. Do you know what I really like about this sequence as well? This is one of my favourite things in video games, and it's kind of strange and maybe a little hypocritical. I like the part in games where they're disciplined enough to not give you what you expect. And I know that might sound weird to some people, but it's one of the things I really liked about there's a certain area in Last of Us where you ride into a university, and there's no fights, there's no monsters, there's no danger, and then right at the end of it you have to activate a generator and there's a couple of monsters. But I like the part before that, because you've spent the whole game getting jacked by bad guys. Humans, you know, crazy humans, cannibals, all kinds of mad shit. Clickers, infected, just bad things, traps, all kinds of stuff. And then you have this wonderful sequence where you spend the whole time expecting it, and it never comes. And then at the end they ruin it by giving you what you expect, which is unfortunate, but, you know, attention spans, the average gamer, you've got to shoot something, right? And in some games, they'd have turned that sequence into a walking segment where the narrative would have been dumpstered on you and you'd spent the whole time trying to skip it, but it's in engine, so you bloody can't. And I wouldn't have liked it, and I would have critiqued it, and I would have complained, and I would have said this is not how you do it, because it's not how you do it. But you know, in a game like this, where they're using these moments to build tension, to build a picture in your brain, and then they cash it in with a horror moment with Alma, or they cash it in with a silent moment with an audio stinger, or they cash it in with a surprise gunfight against a unique enemy that you don't see that often. That, to me, guys, is when video game pacing is at its most elegant, and it's what you should be emulating. I want to be surprised. I don't want to read your game like a book. I don't want to know every room before it happens. I want you to make me go, oh shit, what? Damn, You know, I want to be subverted in my expectations, but just not in a, we'll make all the females on roids killing all the men who are all effeminate taking estrogen. I don't want it in that kind of sense, because that's just silly. I don't think you can subvert expectations by adding gender politics into your video game. I think that's just a really shallow way of essentially shoehorning your ideologies onto other people. And unfortunately, nobody wins when you do that, because it's like how they say with friends, isn't it? If you want to keep friends with somebody, don't discuss politics or religion. And there's a lot of truth to that, because these are questions there are no answers to. And do you see this guy trying to shoot me through the wall? Did you see that? That guy could see exactly where I was and was perfectly tracking me, shooting me through the bloody wall like a beast. And it ended up hurting him because I knew exactly where he was. So I think that's a good example right there of God design on AI helping the player. If he'd have not done that, I didn't know where he was. I had to guess when I went in that room. And sometimes when you're guessing, it's difficult. You know, it makes it real hard. Don't do that. That's just a waste of HP. But I do really like a discipline in encounters, and I do like the idea of setting you up in such a... Like, right now, this is going to... Not only does that enable you to get on the roof, so the spawn of this monster has become traversal equipment for the next sequence, but it's also spawned a mini-boss, who I'm going to stun with a grenade, and then I'm going to kill with a rocket. And you shoot this guy, I think, is it 4 times? And he's dead. So this is why carrying the rocket launcher is incredibly powerful, but you don't have to do it. But I'm going to do it because I love the idea of carrying power weapons. I'm the type of person that tries to get the long shot in Gears 1 and keep it for the whole game because it comes in handy. It's a very good gun. But keep pushing forward. There are some... Oh, there was another stutter. That was a stutter of all stutters right there. It's so interesting how the scripting is causing those, and I wonder what that is. If you're a programmer guy, if you know anything about that in video games, if you've ever been like freelance or you work for a developer, and you've got an idea of what that is, I'd love to know on a more technical side of what's going on right there. Oh, be careful here. There's a couple of windows where the enemies try to take some cheap shots. This right here reminds me of the rooftop in The Last of Us Part 2. Only this is really fun and designed well, and that game's a piece of giant dog shit that you should never play.
Look out, grenade!
Look out, grenade! I like that too. Because he's prioritizing running away from the grenade, he's vulnerable. I love those states in the enemies. It's such a cool idea. And there's a couple of games that I'd really like to make. But at the moment, Shooter is definitely one of them that's up there on my hypothetical if I had to make a video game. Oh, be careful here, these people are going to come out of the windows. The good news is this animation is canned, so if you understand the animation you can track it and you can hit them before they recover and you can kill them all before they do anything. That guy over there that I'm shooting in the head that's not dying, he's a pain in the ass. He's still alive too. He's like getting shocked by an air conditioning unit or something. I didn't really know what was happening then. He has a shotgun, be very careful. But I've been watching a lot of people talk about Roblox and the Roblox developer studio and how a lot of people got together and learned modeling by using YouTube tutorials and Blender, and then they started getting some friends that knew how to program a little bit, some friends that knew how to animate, and the next thing you know, 2 years later, they've made a really, really successful Roblox first-person shooter, and they've made a decent amount of money doing it as well. It's now their full-time job, which is kind of crazy, isn't it? Because when you think of Roblox, you look at it like it's this kids platform for your niece or your nephew to play on, and it's all these bootleg, thrown-together garbage, horribly performing, terribly looking experiences that are ripping off modern games. And it can be easy to see Roblox like that. But then you realise there was a publication recently that said that Roblox has made more money than like the entirety of Ubisoft and Take-Two combined. So Roblox is incredibly financially lucrative, and you just wouldn't think it, would you? But the infrastructure they have there, the economy they have there with the Robux and the cryptocurrencies that you get that you can then use inside of the games, like they've made this framework for children to beg their parents for money to keep up with the vanity of their friends and schoolmates. And it's incredibly financially rewarding. And the cool thing about Roblox is anybody can make those games, anybody can try their hand at doing it. And the more I see it, guys, the more I'm thinking about getting into it, and I'm going to try and do something, because I'm already interested in 3D, because I did it at university. I wasn't very good, but I was decent enough to understand the software and to model some cool things and have fun doing it. And I've been looking at Blender, and I've been looking at watching tutorials on how to model guns, and it's the type of thing that I think I should be able to do. I'm willing to put the time in. You know, I taught myself editing, I taught myself compositing, I taught myself Photoshop, you know, After Effects. I taught myself a lot of these softwares that I use, some of them on a day-to-day basis. And if you can autodidactically teach yourself one software when you don't have the internet to use all the tutorials on all the YouTubes that people have now, like, now that YouTube exists, there's no reason to not know anything, because there's so many people that can help you take shortcuts that they simply didn't have. Ooh, this fight here is really long on the checkpoint, and it can crash too. This, I think, was the one area of the game where it crashed, so I was super pissed off. But there's a heavy immediately. There's a couple of guys that spawn on the left, and this is the first instance of a big heavy who has a hammerhead, which is a projectile weapon that fires these green needles, and they're really powerful. Unfortunately, they don't seem to one-hit kill to the head consistently. There seems to be some kind of weird RNG on if you can just murk people. This is him here. This is a heavy, and he's using this gun. Do not shoot the rocket at this plant. If you do, you'll kill yourself because it has an invisible edge. But if you hit him twice with rockets, he goes down immediately. And sometimes there's a spawn on that balcony to your right. You'll notice I keep looking there. The game has not spawned correctly right now, and you can get spawned on in some weird ways here. But this is the new gun. This is the hammerhead. It's like an interesting nail gun, basically, and it has a kind of decent scope on it, which I don't mind too much, but it's nowhere near as good as the penetrator from the first game. The penetrator on the first game was so fun. I love that gun so much. What a cool gun. I'm going to use it though for sheer nostalgia and variety. But just the idea of looking into using these softwares, Roblox Studios, Blender, kind of blocking out the idea of a multiplayer map, and then after that being quite lost, because then you get into the territory of programming and programming languages, and I do not have that. I don't even know where to start with that. But I feel like we're at the best possible time in human history for information, and thanks to the internet and YouTube and people that are doing it and tutorials, I can definitely look into seeing what it would take. And then the cool part of, if I ever do that, say I spend a couple months getting together some kind of raw vertical slice of what I want to do and what I want to make, and it comes together, I can use my community to test it too. I can use you guys to get involved and you know, be part of it, and it could be something interesting to keep updated to and what have you. And it's definitely something that seems really, really appealing, but at the same time, I'm always trepidatious with projects like that because I know how much work goes into them. When I was younger, I designed an RPG on RPG Maker, and I spent a lot of time, hundreds of hours doing it, and ended up in the end putting it down and never going back to it, which is, you know, kind of a bit of a regret. But it's like anything else. It's like a YouTube endeavor. It's like a streaming endeavor. It's one of those things where we all say we're going to do something, right? We're going to learn an instrument. We're going to learn a language. We're going to learn this. We're going to learn that. We're going to do that. We're going to do this, and then it's easy to put it off, and then in the end you never do it. So it's just a stream of consciousness right now, but it's definitely something I'm interested in. And at the moment, I'm just learning certain aspects of it and what would go into it, and getting really inspired. Because the game I'd like to make the most is probably a JRPG, and there's so many tools to do it. It's just the way that I would like to do it, I don't know how to do, you know. And it involves going to places and interacting with people that know more than you, and taking it a whole lot more seriously than I am at the moment. But game development is always something that's worth talking about, I think, because I do it on every video I do, and in many ways I've spent the majority of my life criticizing mechanics, analyzing mechanics, and understanding them, trying to see how they work and how they tick and the thought behind them and how I feel about them and such. So you'd be surprised what that kind of experience can do. So that right there was a bad idea. Did you see that? Another invisible wall on a helicopter stopping you from spawn killing enemies. I don't like that design, dude. That design's almost as bad as the Halo design, where they just make the gunship shoot you with the most damaging rounds in the game. Why even show me an enemy spawning like that if you're going to put a huge fucking collision box stopping me from shooting it? And maybe if I'd have used a normal gun I would have been fine, but I was hoping to hit the inside of the chopper and use the splash to kill all the soldiers before the abseiled. But here's the interesting thing about scripting, isn't it? For all we know, this fight can't happen until they abseil. So until they abseil, they might not even have damage thresholds or HP values, so you can't even kill them. There's a big spawn up there as well, that's why I threw that grenade if you're wondering. And that smoke over there on the skybox, if that was animating a little bit, it'd look so much better. And the only reason it looks so kind of weird is because my FOV I think is slightly higher, so it looks a little skewed. This game for the most has pretty nice skyboxes. They're generally static and not that dynamic, but they're high quality and they've scaled well with the new hardware, so that's kind of cool. This is a tough fight, this, by the way. I haven't mentioned that. I failed this fight once, and I failed it on this corner here because somebody shot me from on top of the building. But I think that's the end of it. You can see some artifacts happening as well. I don't really know what's going on there, but, you know, old game, new hardware. There's some HP. We can hear some infighting going on. Could be between the replicas and the security forces. It isn't the ATF in this, is it? See this? This should be one-hit kills. When I'm hitting these people in the face like this, that should be the end. If this gun was one-hit kill on the heads, I would do some of the sickest aiming I could and make this footage super amazing. But unfortunately, these guys, they take 2 hits to the head. Now this is a pretty slow-firing gun too. But that's the benefit of it. Did you see that? That's why this gun is so cool. That's why the original was called the Penetrator. If you kill people with this gun, they fly backwards and it pins them to the wall. I don't think I'd ever seen that before until Fear 1. I might have seen it. If it's in Red Faction, guys, I've just forgot. There might have been other games that had it, but this was one of the first instances of it, and I adore it. The idea of pinning people to walls with stakes, oh my god, it's so John Carpenter's Vampires, isn't it? Which I've not watched that movie in ages. I should probably do that. Like, look at that. Look how satisfying that is. He just gets absolutely berated and serrated and boom, stuck against the side of the kitchen. The music is really cool as well. Got some tension building. I'm coming back over here for potentially some body armor. Yeah, there you go. That is, I've not mentioned that, guys. It's an obvious strategy that you've probably been doing most of your gaming life. But if you have decent armor, and there's armor on the ground, don't just go and replenish like a millimeter of armor. Go get tagged a bit, get dirty, kill some dudes, and come back and grab it. There's no reason to waste resources if you can use them intelligently. I love the music right now. It's got such a good beat to it. It's just that. You're in a firefight, it's kicking off, it's trepidatious, what's going on. Really nice touch. Is he alive? I can't tell. That's a fire extinguisher. Someone's alive because the music's still going. There he is. There's a fire extinguisher making a big mess. There's a guy with sugar puff armor on. And that guy just talks. I think this is the second spawn. You can probably pre-nade this. And he runs towards the fire extinguisher, which could have been a really nice trap. God, Fear had so many cool ideas. I suppose this is the part in the commentary where I'd mention Trepang 2, right? Because Peen loves mentioning that game, and that game is probably the closest thing to trying to emulate what Fear did. I think Trepang gets Fear more than Fear 2 does in some ways. It's just that game suffers in the ways where Monolith are really strong. Damn, Freezer. This is a cool room. Such an interesting throwaway room, too. Just a random freezer with nothing going on and a couple of ghosts in the maintenance basement. Oh, additionally, guys, you won't see me turning on the torch too much. I'm not a big fan of putting torches on, even though both the first Fear and the second Fear really want you to fuck around with the torch a ton. Not really my style, but every so often it gets so dark you've kind of got to do it. But this is another spooky moment. They're trying to shit us up. There's a ghost. There's another ghost. There's another ghost. Just hip fire him. Hip fire, pepper some rounds, get on with your day. I really think they missed the mark with these enemies. I feel like the ones in the first game were quite creepy, whereas these, because they're not threatening. When you have an enemy that's like this, that's not threatening, it just doesn't even feel like it's a video game. It just feels like I'm just running around an area and I can't see. You know, right now this is Condemned 2, where they put so much darkness on the screen, you might as well just play with a blindfold. Which, if that came to PC and you could turn those filters off, I'd do that immediately. Can you imagine Condemned 2 without those horrible filters? And they do it to symbolize a narrative hook, because that game's got all kinds of supernatural stuff going on. And it just doesn't work. Like, I just don't get it. And it's a shame too, because I really like that game. And there's so much stupid shit in that game. Oh my god, I love Condemned 2. Even the multiplayer, right? I get to be the multiplayer guy right now. So, I didn't like Singularity's multiplayer. I didn't like Fear 2's multiplayer. I liked Condemned 2's multiplayer. Condemned 2's multiplayer was so stupid and garbage, it was the most fun, dude. Hiding behind doors, waiting for dudes to run into rooms, and then coming out and smacking them with a sledgehammer, never got old in that game. I used to run away from people once I started losing a fight or I was getting, like, team killed, and I'd run off, go into a room, hook behind the door, they'd come sprinting in, and I'd already be charging their hit and just whacking them. It was such a good technique. Then they went on the knees where you could, like, crush their head and stuff, just kick them quickly, get on with the next guy. It was so silly. I never got 1000G on that game as well because of bullshit boosters. Put me off boosting forever, that. Which I know it's a silly thing, but it's true. Like, most people that boost on achievement and trophy websites are probably really nice people, and, you know, they work together and they get stuff done, and it's come a long way. But back in the 360 days, people were assholes. Motherfuckers, oh, can I go first? They get the achievement, then they leave. Get the achievement and leave. If you ever got an achievement in a boosting session and left before you helped the others get it, I hope you fucking die. I hope you die 1,000 deaths to Akuma in Street Fighter 5. I truly do, dude. I want to see your fucking ass split into kanji. That's what I want to see. I want to see rivers of blood, because you're a horrible human being and you deserve hiccups that hurt so much you question whether or not you're about to leave this mortal coil. You're a terrible human being. That was weird. Look at me trading with these fights as well. It's so frustrating trading when you shoot first. Like, this is at the point as well, guys. At this point, I was not having anywhere near the same amount of fun I was having in those earlier levels, because it was getting hard now. It was getting to the point where every gunfight I was getting tagged. No matter how fast I was or how quick I was still getting, like, the rough end of the encounters. So it definitely felt like a challenge at this point. But it gets even worse too. So, like, if you're struggling now, grit your teeth, because there's more hell to see. Hell continues. But I believe that isn't this once you get the card for surgery or whatever it is, the card for the certain part of the level, I think you face one of those crazy marionette dudes. But I've missed the door somewhere. And once again, the telegraphing on this is... Some of the telegraphing in this game leaves you hanging. And I don't particularly mind it because you don't see it anymore, but there are times where you just feel kind of lost. I think it's this door here, right? You have to touch this door with the swiper. Yeah, and this is a fight. So come in here, couple of dudes, drop them immediately. That was a really good fight, that. I took down 3 guys, one of them was sugar puffed, and I didn't get a single tick of damage. He comes along. I don't know what he was doing. We nail him to the wall. So yeah, that was a positive room, that was an optimistic room. Yeah, I think this is where the marionette dude is once you've done the mission objective here. I was listening to Darkside Phil play Ghouls and Goblins Resurrection while I was recording this. It took him 6.5 hours to get to the first checkpoint on the first level. It was really, really something. And I'm not going to talk too much shit because old games are hard. Old games kick your ass. And even though that's a game that came out in 2021, it is a remake of a very old game that is very difficult. And I've got to give him props, you know. Phil is not a very gifted gamer. Phil doesn't have the patience or the reflexes anymore. He plays video games for money because he's turned his passion into a job and he's miserable at his job. But he managed to get it done, and it deserves props when you do something like that, because it is not easy. You know, especially when you push yourself. So here he is, that's the guy. Right, he comes in, he spawns, he runs away, and there's a checkpoint. And if you restart the checkpoint, he starts at the same place every time. So what you can do here, guys, is you can practice your DPS on him and see what puts him down the fastest, or what resources you want to use, and then just go with that. Because that's what I did. I restarted a couple times and then I preempt him with some nades here. Because I'm not using the nades, so I can just kind of get rid of them a ton and hopefully do a lot of damage. And he's going to come through the rooms if you push him. And if he gets close, he hits you and he does a lot of damage too. But you can sound whore him. And he generally runs to the same place. And right there I used a shot grenade to stun him. And I'm just hitting the living shit out of him, and he gets stuck on the door just then. So I shock him again, he goes on his knees, and I think that's the end of him. I love that effect as well, when they invert the screen like that. It's so cool. What a great enemy. This random, homeless, crazy ventriloquist. He's just a beast. And now that you've got the swiper, you can go back to that door I mentioned, swipe on that door, and then get through there. And just look at the pacing here as well. You know, the moments of calm, the tension, the dread that they build, fighting this big unique enemy, then taking on all the soldiers and the spawns. Like, you can criticize the level design, you can criticize the visual aesthetic of it being quite drab and monotonous and too mundane, but the pacing and how they enable you to really get sunken into what you're doing, you have to compliment it. It's the same thing Singularity did really well. It's one of those things that I think video games have got to the point of being really good at. And then I think COD came along, and COD kind of diverted people's attentions because everything had to be fast, faster, faster, everything's exploding, Michael Bay the whole way. And then there's games like this that show you that you don't necessarily need to go that route. Sometimes a slow sequence is just as good as a fast one, you know? And I'm a fast player, I like fast. But keep moving forward, going through is that a science fair, did it say? Couple guys in the back, I wonder if that's meant to be a dark room. I don't think it is it's an observation room. I don't think you're supposed to see through that glass. I think it's meant to be one-way glass, isn't it? Because this is the dark side of the school where the scientists are watching and monitoring the children. Which is a wonderfully twisted design, isn't it? There are a few things that can make the blood boil than a dark situation like that. The idea of this science experiment on these poor children and these cold, sterile scientists just silently observing. It's one of the things that makes the Truman Show so interesting, isn't it? Because when you think about it, the Truman Show, it's a funny movie, it's a good movie, but it's kind of dark, really. There's this dude who's a slave and doesn't know he's a slave, and his entire life is for show and for sale. It's like, it's just consumerism, isn't it? It's capitalism, consumerism gone mad. This poor person is just being completely milked. Just the entire thing is just a proliferation of his life. His anguish, his joy, his everything is just monetized and produced and projected by this television company. And when you think about it, it's a sad movie. You know, it's a sad, dark movie in many ways, and I think they managed to pull it off in such an interesting manner, because you really feel for the guy, you really feel for the whole situation. Because it's such an interesting thing to think about, the idea that what we live and what we experience might not necessarily be real. Oh, be careful when you touch this too. When you touch this computer, you can already tell that, you know, bad things are going to happen. And I don't remember this particular sequence, but if I had to guess, I would say the scrubbers. I would absolutely say it's going to be those skinny, emaciated dudes. Because you know, in this game, you don't have to worry about assassins until after you meet Snakefist, because that's when they introduce them. And all the assassin encounters are absolutely fine, except for the one where you take on like 20 in that huge room with no checkpoints. And I don't even remember that room, which tells you that when you're using slow motion, you're going to have no problems. But here we go, I was wrong. It's a couple of normal security staff. So take these guys out. There's a shotgunner. Don't let him shoot you. This is a really, really good advantageous position, this, because there's a lot of cover. There's a lot of geometry between you and them. And because there's a lot of geometry for them to navigate, they have to do unique replica things like diving through the window like that guy did. They have to navigate it, and as they're navigating it, they're doing animations where they can't do as much damage to you. So you can use that to do damage to them. He's throwing grenades. We need to get out. Does it bug you guys when you watch people play games and someone throws a nade their way and they don't react? I suppose we're all guilty of getting too like tunnel visioned and zoned in on a specific thing, and sometimes you're not always paying attention. But when someone's just playing a game and there's grenades just rattling all around them and they're not reacting, I find it just absolutely insane. And unfortunately, guys, this is our first instance of OBS encoding issues. But luckily, did you see that? All you lost then, all we lost, was me walking down a corridor with no bad guys, and as soon as I had to shoot somebody, the capture recovered. That was quintessentially perfect capture failure. Obviously, you never want capture to fail, but if it does, you want it to fail in an area that you're not doing anything in. And if you've ever recorded, guys, this is a huge thing, this, you notice God is evil, God is the devil, right? God is a demon. You never ever have like capture fails on the footage you throw away. You never have that. You never have your capture shitting the bed on the attempt that didn't go, on the really close one but you died at the end. It's always on the successful attempt where the capture shits the bed. It truly is a phenomenon that you can only truly experience if you've done this. There's a big fight coming up here as well. When you come back through this area the other way, there's lots of dudes to shoot. It's quite an in-depth area and it's really easy to die too. And if you lift this crusher up down here or wherever it is, there is a booster underneath that to give you more slow motion. I always remember those boosters in the first sphere because there was an achievement for collecting both all of the health ones and all of the slow-mo ones. And I think that the secrets in Sphere 1 were hid really well. So I don't even know if I was able to do it. Like, I used to remember where a ton of them were. I used to find tons of them, but I just used to never find them all. I'd always miss one or two. And I think in the end I ended up doing one of them, but I didn't end up doing the other one. If anybody remembers the achievement list for Sphere 1 on 360, you'll remember just how difficult it was. It was a very challenging game to get completion on, but it meant something if you did it. And here we go. This is not quite the moment I mentioned, but it's coming up. That's the game stuttering right there. Technical woes are assailing us right now. Then you come in here, and I think you touch there's a computer somewhere that you touch, because you have to come back from this location, and that's when it populates that whole room with baddies. And there's a firefight coming up that took me a lot longer than I wish it did. And it's this one. So this room here is a pretty creative room with a lot of guys in it. And for some reason, I just was really unhappy with my performance. So I ended up retrying in this room about maybe 5 to 10 times. Because there's balconies, they're above you, they're at the side of you, they take a lot of damage. Like, look at this guy right now, taking ludicrous amounts of damage as we try to stop Colonel Vanek. And it's just a difficult room. And it's a difficult room that I'm probably going to make look very easy, but when I tell you it's not easy, believe me, because that's the biggest problem with any of the walkthroughs on my channel. You only see the victory, you know, you don't see the defeats. And this game's going to be a little different because at the end I'm going to show you a couple of defeats. Because as I was recording it, there were a couple of moments where it's just like, Jesus Christ, I died quick then. I should probably show people that so they understand what I was talking about. So I cut out a handful of them. I didn't cut them all out because there was more. There was way more of them and it would have just got boring. But I got a couple of good examples of the scripting being really goofy. Of the stutters just completely sacrificing me like a lamb to the slaughter. And stuff like that. So I'll have a little bit of a B-roll at the end for people that are interested in that. That was an unfortunate grenade. I hit the one inch of metal that made it bounce around. But as we push forward here, we've got explosives, we've got people running out. You can see that the normal trooper as well The normal trooper's outfit is a little bit more high-tech and cooler than it used to be. He doesn't just look like the standard soldiers at the beginning of the game. And I like that they changed the outfits of the enemies to make it look like they've been improved and upgraded and they're new and what have you. It gives you a sense of understanding why you're getting your ass kicked a bit more than you did at the start. I don't know how to feel about armor though in first-person shooters on enemies and circumventing it. Like, I feel like that's something that we need to look into with video games, and we haven't quite come up with enough solutions to it. And I think one of the best examples I can think of is Halo. And you're probably thinking, whoa, Chris dropping Halo, what is this? Is this an April Fool's? It is not, it's April 3rd that I'm doing this, to give you some context. But on Halo, the enemies had shields. And the enemies would run away when you broke their shields, and they would hide to try and get it back. And it was wonderful AI, it was incredibly intelligent AI. And it led to an almost unique experience that you couldn't have on any other game. Fear's AI is legendary, Halo's is more so, I think, because their AI was really realistic and they did interesting things. They used to skate around and all kinds of odd things. They used to run away, which is something that you don't see a lot, and you saw in Fear too. But this is a scripted fight against Vanek. You don't get to fight him, unfortunately. It would have been really fun though. Hear me pulling the rocket launcher out just in case. I'll take him down. But in Halo, when they lost their shields, they would become more defensive sometimes. Sometimes they'd become, crazy and suicidal. And then if they hid for a while, they could get their shield back. And there was a balance in that game. There was a yin and a yang. Bullets did more damage to the health, and energy weapons did more damage to the shield. So there was this constant resource management that some people partook in, some people didn't, where you use the energy to drop the shield, you use the bullet to kill, and that was the way. If you use bullets on shields, you were wasting ammo and you look like a noob, and if you used energy on HP, it could work. There's probably some instances where it worked just fine, but you were probably better to swap over to the revolver, the magnum, or the battle rifle or something. And we have more scrubbers in the prison sequence, which, this is one of the longest sequences involving these enemies. And they jump around the roof a lot, which is really, really good aim training. Which I want to talk about that after we've done this Halo topic. But going back to it, but there was a weapon in Halo called the charge pistol, which was a gun that the most scrubbiest of enemies had. The easiest enemies in the game had it, they turned up all the time, and it was a very weak pistol. It was kind of like the cricket from Men in Black, only it didn't hit like a truck, it looked shitty. It was shitty. But it was really good when you charged it, because when you charged it, it broke the shields. And it led to the noob combo, which you've heard me speak about quite a lot. And the idea of a shield that is quite resilient to a lot of damage, that can regenerate if they're intelligent about how they play, but has this huge weakness, I think is a really, really cool thing. And I'd love to see that done more so in games. I love the idea of certain armors having certain weaknesses, and once you hit the weakness, you can just completely circumvent it. A little bit like the Regenerator, where when you shoot at the Regenerator on Resident Evil 4, when you first fight it, all you're doing is helping it, because you don't understand how it works, you don't understand what's going on there, and you're just wasting resources that are precious. And then later on you come to understand that they have a very specific weakness, and you don't want to shoot at anywhere but those specific weaknesses, and then you get the tools to do that, and it becomes a lot easier. And then you go back to the game years later and realise all you really need to do is blow its leg off and then knife stun lock it, because it can't do anything. And the knife is incredibly good at doing that. You just get rid of it by brute forcing its damage threshold. But I think the idea of armor on enemies being fun and a skill check, rather than being tedious and just spongy and unnecessarily tanky, is definitely something I'd love to see happen. I'd love to see more innovations in that area and more creation. But coming back to the tangent that I mentioned, I talk about shooters a lot, especially at the moment. A lot of the stuff I'm covering on my channel is me essentially getting nostalgic and passionate about first-person shooters. And I talk about the design, I talk about the thought behind the design, and where I first saw it, where I first experienced it, and how I'd change it, and what I think it did well, what I think it did less or so. And one of the things I think video games really fail at is testing your aim in shooters. Most shooters have everything on the same axis as you. Everything is flat. It's all about horizontal ability. You'll notice most enemies in this game, unless they're in higher positions than me and I'm in a lower position, I never have to look upwards to shoot people. I never have to go from neutral and then reach upwards. Because games simply just don't have that covered. The verticality is missing in a lot of these encounters. But these guys aren't like that. These guys are quite unique, and so are the assassins. The assassins and these dudes are essentially the same unit. The assassins are just the more elite variant. This enemy jumps around. This enemy's really fast. This enemy can go on the roof. This enemy forces you to go from a comfort zone of left and right to incorporate up and down. And I really wish bosses in video games, when it comes to shooters, weren't just huge HP pools. I wish they forced the player to do the skill you're learning the whole game. And I really think that there is a market for bosses to be mobile and have brief windows where you can interrupt them and stun them and then cash damage in, where they are really quick, really capable. That's an assassin just then, did you see that? You might not have known what you saw then if you aren't up on Fear lore and Fear gameplay. Unfortunately, Terry is about to have a real bad day. And we are introduced to the first assassin sequence. Assassins are elite wetwork units that can go invisible and are incredibly acrobatic. And the game also gives you this super powerful weapon, which is actually kind of dog shit. I don't like this gun at all. If you hit things with that gun, they die. It turns them into a skeleton. It's a little bit like the railgun from the first Fear, only the railgun is better in every conceivable way. Why, oh why, did you get rid of the railgun? This gun fires a really slow-moving projectile that can arc towards enemies that looks really cool as a gun and has a cool-looking blob projectile, but in practice, it misses more than it hits. It's slow. It's just not great. And I forgot just how much I don't like that weapon, and I carry it and don't use it, hoarding it like some precious resource, when in reality, it's actually a pile of dog shit. And other than its ability to instantly kill things if you hit them, which you can aim at them, fire it, and it can still miss because it's so slow, like, it's nowhere near as good as it needs to be, so do not ever hesitate to use it, because you don't need it. You absolutely do not need it. And then this right now, ladies and gentlemen, is one of the best parts of the game, because they are channeling their Turok the Dinosaur Hunter genes right here, which is infighting between factions. And that right there, oh my god, collision, what the fuck? How was I not hitting that man? This gun makes me sad, dude. It could have been so good. It could have been so powerful, and instead it's just... like, I feel like nostalgia is tinting Fear 1, but the penetrator just, in my memory, was so much better than this hammerhead. Like, this thing's just a tickle factory. That's a heavy, by the way. He has a hammerhead too. So be really careful. This is a super good gun to carry because it's just monstrously strong. The problem is you have to aim the bloody thing. And without slow-mo, aiming a sniper rifle, not the easiest thing to do. Keep your distance, put them down. But infighting, one of the most interesting aspects of enemy AI that you don't see that much of. And when you do see it, it's always awesome. I can't think of a single game where enemy infighting is bad. I can't, because there's something cool about you not being the solitary target. The problem with the programming is, a lot of the times it's too binary. So, you'll have a state where the enemies pretend to shoot each other, and then the moment you alert them, they have this unvoiced pact, this truce, and then they immediately all jack you up. And that's garbage. That's a bad example of enemy infighting. But before that happens, when they're pretending to kill each other, and it's like, this feels like a real war, everyone's having a go at everyone else, there's this wonderful chaos that is generated, and I feel like it's something that we need to move towards, because it just adds so much depth to something simple. You are literally getting more longevity out of your enemies by making them fight each other. And admittedly, the balance then needs to be tweaked, because if you can just wait and let the enemies kill each other, you don't even have to do anything, you know? And that's kinda not what you want. That's not the goal, is it? That's not what we're going for. But at the same time, it's kinda cool. Kind of a cool feature. And you're using the tools that you're given to overcome the situation. And I like that, you know? I like the idea of interrupting people and getting advantage. There are some games where when an enemy's not aware of you, you get a damage bonus. You get like a critical modifier on them. So when the enemy's unaware, the first thing you do when you shoot them will kill them. Some enemies die in one hit when they don't know where you are. And then when they're alerted, they turn into bloody bullet sponges. And I've never got that. This is a tough fight, this, by the way. Be very careful. I died here. Right at the end as well, which is frustrating, but what can you do? But there's way more soldiers in this sequence than you think there are. And you might have noticed the issue with the sniper rifle. I know I have. The only problem I have with the sniper is you can't see. Like, you look down that scope, you are just completely destroying your periphery vision. And it's the reason why I'm going to try my best to not use it so much, because it's just... As much of a benefit that you get from DPS, you lose your awareness of the battlefield. And this is a pretty meaty fight, this. There's going to be a lot of troops coming your way. That's a shotgunner. Did you see the damage he just did to me at that range? If you go back on the video, guys, I don't know how good my HP was, but he definitely chunked me then. And he was... How far away was that, would you say? 100 yards? Like, I don't even know. 100 yards, that's probably... Shall we say 100 yards? That's... Is it 100? I don't really know fucking yards. 10 yards? It was like 15... What would you think? 15 foot? 15 feet away. I don't know measurements, guys. I don't even know yards, right? Is yards bigger than feet? Probably. This is why I should have paid attention in mathematics, you know? When we were doing bloody measurements. Talking about circumferences and diameters and shit. But suffice to say, that guy was far away, right? What do you think? Was he about 5 meters away? Dude's 5 meters away from me and wrecks me. You know it's sad when you know distance is better in Roblox by studs than you do in real life. Ooh, that's a heavy as well. He takes 2 rockets if they don't hit the top of an invisible wall. That's just terrible. That should never happen, that. I wasted so many ammo then. Like, look at the game. Fuck you, game. That was bullshit. You know it was bullshit. I know it was bullshit. I got robbed. Monolith, you owe me money, goddammit. I gotta go back to school and learn measurements. But swap the rocket out for something else, now it's empty. And then push down this wonderful, like, automated science lab that's going on here with all the machinery kicking off. This is a cool place to shoot people in, it must be said. That's one of the best things about the shooting gallery approach in any shooter. When you get to an environment where it's cool to fight in, it's like when you watch a movie, isn't it? You watch movies, the end of the movie, the hero always finds himself in some industrial place, some steel mill, or some crazy warehouse that's full of all kinds of cool stuff for bad guys to get killed in. Oh, these are assassins. This is the one area where this gun is really useful, because these dudes bum rush you, and you just stick it out there, and if they touch it, they die. But this enemy has a cloaking device, and it likes to hide. They do some really unique things, their AI too. So, they run away, they try to drop down platforms and then come up from other sides and things. These guys are really cool. And there's this super awesome visual effect on them as well. There's times when they shimmer and they have all the colours of the rainbow presented, and it's this weird prismatic awesome visual thing going on. And then there's other times where it just looks awful. It's kind of really weird, actually. And I always remember the effect of it, because when I first saw it, I thought it was the coolest thing I'd ever seen. But there's other times where the collage doesn't look quite as beautiful. Oh, there's one in this elevator too. So be real careful here. Because he runs straight past you, and he doesn't attack. And he comes out of that vent. Boom. Like, look at this AI. Runs away, hides in that corner, and then I can see him and he's dead. Like, such a unique enemy. But there they are, guys, the famous assassins. Those dudes are really dangerous too. They do this jumping, flying punch, and it hurts. But back to the school. Back to the replica guys. And we're now getting some meat and veg out of our shotgun, which is always nice to see. I do think this game does a good job of introducing new weapons. It seems like you're always kind of getting new things a decent amount of the way through. And I think in a shooter you need to have that. You need to have a constant drip feed of interesting tools. And this is, I think, the end of the level. Yeah, there's your team. There's your van that you keep going back to. As they take some dudes on, get back to the APC. Going to get a nice transition here, and we'll move into the next part of the game. That was the elementary school. That is one of the most popular levels in the game, that one. Ooh, this is really hard. So, this is a turret shooting segment, and you can't dodge. You can't duck. So, you have to make your 3 med packs go to turn. You have to be able to survive this whole thing with 3 med packs. And I died here once because you have to really get on top of them, and if they hit you too much, this is difficult as hell. And my advice, guys, keep an eye on your HP and only use the med packs when you get down into the bottom 15%, like 20% of your life, so that you get a little bit more time. All you're doing here is bleeding time so that you can kill enough enemies to get the checkpoint. And this gun is really powerful, but it whiffs. It whiffs, and there's so many enemies, and it's like the expectation on the player here is 1000% to do with slow motion. So when you don't have the slow-mo, keeping ahead of all of this without getting tagged it's really hard. But luckily, you know, it could be worse. You got to look at it like that. This part could be really bad, but it's not so bad. Like, if they did any more damage, I can't imagine this moment. And there you go. Boom. Did it. And it looked easy, didn't it? It didn't look bad at all, but trust me, guys, when you first get on that and you realise what's happening, you're going to feel it. You're going to be... It's just that moment where you go, oh no, this could be bad. This could be really bad. And then in the end, I ended up losing because I was getting completely railed and I didn't know where they were coming from. But then the second time, I had a bit more of an idea, and it was okay. I actually really like that sequence too, because it's challenging in the right way. And it's fast too, it's really quick. But anyway, Keegan's doing weird things, so we're going to follow him. FOV's going all crazy as we climb under the fence, and then I think... Interval 6, right, so the final 2 intervals of the game, deterioration. Going through some more maintenance tunnels here, some maintenance halls leading to subways. Leading to tracks and tunnels. And all the rats are running towards us, which is a really, really nice visual piece of tension building. And that's an assassin right there. So remember him, he might be important. I love the way they telegraph the assassins, it's really cool. So here's Keegan doing his favourite Yankowski impression. And there's a pretty difficult fight coming up that you actually got to play in the demo for Fear 2. If anybody remembers the demo, that's an assassin as well. I didn't try killing him, because in some games you can kill enemies in moments like that. In other games they've just got complete immunity. But the demo for Fear 2 was awesome, because they snipped up 3 parts of the game and they stuck them together. And when you play the full game, it wasn't like that. So it was this wonderful, like, you went into it expecting it to be a certain way. Your expectations were so amped and charged, and then when you played it, it was different. And I think that's one of the best things you can do with a demo. That was his jumping punch, did you see it? He does this super forward-moving, jumping Vegeta hammer fist. And it takes off an entire bar too, so if you get hit by that twice, you're dead. Really dangerous enemies. But they're very gracefully used. Like, as I've mentioned before, I did not have a problem with assassins when I beat this originally on 360. I love the enemy type. I think it's a cool enemy. I've always liked him. Scared the shit out of me in the first Fear when I was younger. But I learned how to manipulate him and what to do. See the electrical stuff on it? That's why it hurts so much. Because even though they hit you, it's the after effect of the shock that they put on you. That's why it takes off so much. Really dangerous. However, when you come back to this without slow-mo, there's that one sequence where the assassins are just unrelenting. I think there might be 8. Maybe more. There's a lot. They come in pairs of 2. And it's just a wickedly evil sequence. Oof. That was delightful. Jibbed his arm. There's some body armor. That's the reason why I didn't care too much about getting tagged then, if you're wondering, because I saw that armor through the fence. And if you hear any banging on the recording, guys, I do apologise. My neighbour hasn't done any DIY for ages, and then the moment I started recording, he decided to test every fucking wall for imperfections with a hammer. And they're lovely people, but it's just... life does that sometimes. It syncs up. You know, I've not done commentaries in long runs like this for a while, and the one time I try and do it, someone's making noise, you know. Every other day I could have done it, no noise, no hammers. We don't have any reenactments of the stomp movement. Oh, another assassin. Interesting, I wonder if I hit him. I don't think I did. No hit marker. So this is a cool fight coming up. This is a cool sequence as well. There's a couple of dudes that are going to be abseiling in. Neither of those people died. So do you see what I mean, guys, when I say that the game goes from you hit someone a few times, stun them a bit, and then they die, and then later on it gets to the point where it's not fun. Now we're in it. We've been in it a while, but now we're super in it. Like, we're at the point where everybody is going to be way too beefy, and it stops being as fun. Like, this guy's meant to be beefy. I don't mind this guy being beefy. But the normal dudes, you should never shoot a normal dude as many times as I shot those people. That was ballsy as hell. You don't need to do that. I could have eked out and shot his toe with the sniper rifle, and it would have probably been a better idea, that. But there's still someone alive because the music's still kicking off. I could have even used that gun, which is a huge pile of shit, and I'm not using it, and I should be. I had a really cool clip here as well, guys. I had a clip where I was aiming between two guys repeatedly, using the shotgun's hip fire, and they were both dancing, and they both got jibbed as well. It was this bit here, but it was nowhere near as... This is nowhere near as fun or as cool to watch as that one was. But I ended up dying when I got round this corner, and I lost that footage, which is really frustrating as a walkthrough maker. I don't know if I trimmed it out and put it at the end in all the other clips, but I should have done. Because it was just a really fun moment of boom, 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 flicking between two guys and decimating them. It was a really cool moment. And that's the kind of thing that I'm trying to capture when I come back to these games. I'm trying to get these moments where I do these really awesome movie hero moments. But when the sensitivity is not what it should be, and when the game has got all these limiting factors like the enemies being super tanky and still hitting you even when you hit them, and it just gets really difficult to make that happen. But it's fun to try, and I'm always going to try, because I want my footage to be as entertaining as I can make it. You know, there are people that only listen to these so that they can get the commentary and the background noise, and they can do things and treat it like a podcast, and that's absolutely fine. I do the same thing. But I want the people who do watch to enjoy the gameplay, you know? At the end of the day, we play games. They're not a shared experience of just voyeurism. They're not this experience where when you watch them, they're the same every time. They're not a movie. And that's a good thing, you know? When you watch someone play a game, they don't play it like I do. They don't play it like you do. And that's the stamp of creativity and personality that you can put on your videos. And that's why YouTube and Twitch is so sick. Because you get to put a digital manifestation of who you are. And what you're watching right now, for better and for worse, is who I am. And it's a lot of fun to do. And it's just a shame I wasn't like Rad Brad, the king of YouTube walkthroughs, where every video I put up gets, 200,000 views. And the only thing I have to worry about is talking at the beginning of my video about how many likes I'd like on the next one. Like, he gets more likes on one video than I get views in a month these days, probably. Guy's a beast. FMV, king of the YouTube walkthrough. You know you've done something right when you've convinced the entire world that your playthroughs are walkthroughs. That's how you know he's just the best. You can't touch Rad Brad, he'll fucking kill you, dude. Which was pretty interesting recently, because I expected Rad Brad to do some of the new games. On my streams recently, we've been looking into the most recent releases, And all the like modern media for video games has been really slow on reviews. And I don't really get why. I don't know if they didn't get the codes because the codes were embargoed for too long and they sent the keys late or something, but both the DLC for Doom and Outriders did not get the mainstream coverage you expect. All of them right now have reviews in progress. It's really weird. I don't get it. Like, there's no games right now outside of a handful of eclectic choices that these mainstream companies are going to be focusing on. And unless they're sponsored, half the sponsored stuff they do is on established things that don't need reviews. So, what are they doing exactly? Like, I understand, you know, if you're a guy that covers everything, and you're constantly putting out parts, right now there's tons to do. There's tons of games to be covering. But IGN doesn't really do that, because they're too busy focusing on what the next thing is and looking to the horizon, you know, and the horizon right now has got a couple things on it, but they're all a ways away. You know, the PlayStation 5 doesn't really have anything massive coming for it until Returnal drops, and then I think we've got Resident Evil Village, which is going to be one that everybody's going to be jumping on top of. But other than that, like, there's not any of the huge hitters that you would expect, so what are they doing, guys? Can you think of what they might be doing? Because I kind of can't. This fight is really hard, by the way. These dudes here don't die, they hurt when they hit you, and they're very accurate. And when I did it on this attempt, it's like they took it easy on me. Because every attempt before this, I was dying before I was even getting into the gunfights. They were just absolutely nuking me. And now everybody's super beefy and super armoured, that the basic gunfights now have turned into bullet sponges, and it's getting to the point where surviving these fights is going to start getting a lot more tedious. And I would be lying if I said that I was having the most fun on the latter half of this run. I really wanted the game to end. And I didn't remember where it went either. I knew the end of the game was in like a cooling tower. And I knew that you did a sequence where you go into a machine with Alma. But I couldn't remember how we got there. And unfortunately for me, there was a handful more engagements because there's still a good just under an hour left on this run. But when you think about it, 3.5 hours for a single-player shooter, when you condense all the gameplay down, that is pretty short. Most shooter campaigns are about 5 to 7 hours, depending on how slow you are. So it just goes to show, doesn't it? You know, when you remove all of the downtime and all of the like narrative exposition, you really do lose a huge chunk of your game. And even then, look at it compared to most recent CODs. My COD walkthroughs are like an hour long, 2 hours long tops. And then you have this, 10 years ago. See what that gun did, by the way? It put that man into a really, really weird stunned state and didn't kill him. It's such a weird gun. I remember fighting over that gun in the multiplayer. The gore in this game's interesting as well, isn't it? I really like the jibs and the gore and just how ridiculously bubbly and squelchy it all is. But I think this game's a little bit like Gears. Oh, this is cool. When you turn this on, a bunch of enemies spawn, and then you can turn it back on, and then electrocute them all. You don't even have to throw a grenade or anything. I just did that because I panicked. But in Gears 1, the gore was really stylized, and it was Gears of War gore, you know? It was a gore you got used to. It was very unique. It was very its own thing, very science fiction. And then in the second game, they changed how the gore looked, how the graphics looked, the detail on the characters. Everything looked a bit more cartoony and bright. Kind of similar to what happened with Doom 2016 and Doom Eternal. And people think that Doom Eternal doesn't look as good as Doom 2016 because the lighting's different and because you can see more of the characters and it makes them look a little bit more childish to some people, which is an odd complaint, but I get it. And then this is the same. The gore in the original Fear was really, really interesting. It was really, really, like, it was awesome. The gore was great. And the gore in this game is also great, but it's great in almost a caricature sense of it, in a different manner. Wow, look at the colour correction here as well. Do you see this? Look how bright the game looks. And then look how drab it is. That right there, ladies and gentlemen, is a cinematic effect they've put on the game, a filter, that essentially makes the colours pop instead of this muted... like right now is the complete opposite. This is almost sepia-toned colour correction right here. And you can do this with software, guys. If you want your games to all look almost bubblegum bright and ridiculously sweet, almost saccharine in how clown shoe bright they are. You can make that happen by really amping the colour correction and making those colours pop. If you want to change it and make it more realistic or make it grittier or closer to, you know, movies, where movies have that really like bled out colour palette of muted blues and things, you can do that too. And there are presets to let you do that if you want to use them. Or you can just mess around and get something that looks good for you. And there was a massive moment on YouTube where every Call of Duty commentary was colour corrected to the point of being almost gaudy. And I really didn't like it because it didn't look like COD. It looked like fucking Willy Wonka made COD. But that was what everyone was doing and it became popular. And when somebody starts doing something and getting success, everybody else copies and everybody else follows because they're leading. And it was an interesting part of YouTube, that. And I feel like, how do you feel about colour correction, guys? Because it is subjective. Colour correction is 1000% subjective. You know? In a lot of ways, games are supposed to look a certain way. That's the way they've been designed. But it doesn't mean that you can't make it look prettier or sharper or more defined or less saturated or brighter or a different coloured hue. You can manipulate so many things as well with post-processing. It's crazy. But for me, the one area where I think objectively colour correction is fine, especially for YouTubes and video games, is when you record gameplay, it always makes the gameplay look a little darker. And because it gets compressed on YouTube, you always lose a little quality. So if you can increase the sharpness, if you can bridge the gap between what it looked like when you were playing and what it looks like on the recording using those softwares, I think that is one area where there's no argument against it. I think that's just how it should be done and how good it could be. And that's what I would have done with colour correction had I had After Effects for the many years that I was on YouTube. The problem is that I ended up losing my hard drive and losing my copy of After Effects, and I didn't want to get it back because all the ones I tried didn't work. And then later on, when Nier Automata came out, I managed to get After Effects back again, and it enabled me to do a lot of composite work in the place it's meant to be done. Because if you don't know, guys, when you try to do things in softwares that aren't designed to do them, you have to get creative, you have to cut corners and do all kinds of weird faux imitations to get the same result that can be done really quickly with a preset. You know, if I were to animate and keyframe, frame by frame, something in Premiere, I can do that, but I don't have the same level of control over what I'm doing than I would if I was using software that's designed to do it. So if I were to make something in After Effects, I have 100% creative freedom to do that. If I do the same thing in Premiere, I've got like 40% amount of freedom, and I have to do all kinds of silly things to get a comparable result which would be easily done in the other software. And that's where it gets interesting. So if you've ever wondered, guys, when you've looked at my stuff, if I've ever done colour correction or if I've ever thought about it, I know a decent amount about colour correction, and the only reason I never did it on the videos was usually to make sure that they look like how they were meant to look when I played them. And then for a lot of things, it was simply because I just disagreed with the trend on YouTube. And I do think colour correction can look really, really nice, and I think it's something that's useful to learn about, because you can make your game look like your favourite aesthetic. You know, if you've watched a movie, if you watch Minority Report and you see all the colours blown out and it's got that dystopian future where everything's cool, chilling, haunting hues of almost like a sterile environment, if you want your videos to look like that, you can do that. You can make every game look like that. You could take Mario Sunshine and you could make it look like Minority Report if you know how to affect the blues and change the colour balance. And that's one of the cool things about learning to make videos and to elevate videos. Like, you see a lot of people that do montages that mess with colour correction, and they mess with aspect ratio, and they add all those crazy blurs and effects and things, and that's awesome. Oh, wow. That's awesome if you like it. But I do think in a lot of ways less is more, and especially for YouTube. One of the things I noticed, that the more effort I put into certain areas of production, the less people noticed. And that means you're doing it right, ladies and gentlemen. You know? If nobody mentions it, it's doing its job. This was from the demo, this sequence. This is interesting as well because it's a street full of enemies, and there's a couple snipers here, so you want to counter-snipe the snipers if you can. I've completely failed to speak about the laser gun I was just using then. That laser gun's kind of interesting because in the old Fears, was it Extraction Point they introduced that laser? Where you could hold a laser on people? Or was that in the first game? I don't remember. There was a concentrated laser gun in one of the earlier Fears, and I'm thinking Perseus Mandate or Extraction Point because I remember the model on it being really shit. It looked like you were holding a pack of fucking Viscounts or something. It was just a square. You're just holding a random square. It's like a keg of Coors Light, and it's like a golden effect on it, and it shoots a red laser like the one we're using. And this gun here is a direct reference to it, which makes me think that it's probably in the original Fear, purely based off the fact that Monolith made it again. And I don't remember how good it was. I think it's one of those guns that they gave the heavies, and it was good when they used it, but when you used it, it was never that great. Like, I remember the laser being a power weapon, but on console it wasn't that important because I didn't really use it. On PC, because you can flick between targets really quickly, you can keep everybody stunned, which is really powerful. And I ended up liking the laser a lot more on PC than I did on console, so that was really sweet. But we're moving towards a cinema here, and this cinema has a heavy in it and a couple of dudes in front. And then after that, it's going to lead to the final robot sequence of the game, which is also one of the hardest parts of doing no slow motion. It's just a shame that you have to play like an absolute bot the whole time, edging forward cowardly for 20 minutes, and it's complete misery. This game also got DLC, which is called Reborn, which is a really, really odd DLC that I played on the console, where you play as a replica soldier. And it's kind of short. It's like an hour and a half long. If you do it really quickly, you can probably beat it in 40 minutes. And I was tempted to cover it just so that I had another project, because I want to make sure I do one project a month if I can, at least on YouTube, so that people have always got something to look forward to. And then I remembered it has a huge mech section in it. Like, half of that DLC is using a mech, and the mechs on PC are just not fun. It's just not fun to do. So I'm probably not going to cover it now, but I was definitely contemplating it, and who knows, maybe in 2 years, guys, video games will be even worse than they are right now. We'll all be dying in a drought of video games with nothing good to play, and I'll come back on Reborn and be like, this is the best game I've ever played because there's no games anymore, and when there's no games, you come back to games you didn't have the time for, and they immediately seem so much better, because did I say there's no games? There's no games! You never know, you know? I never thought I'd be making this video. Fear 2's always been one of those interesting ones for me where I respect the hell out of it, but I didn't like it as much as the first game. Here we go, boys. We got the laser. You notice that the heavy was using it too. I suppose the inevitable question will come up, Chris, why have you never covered Fear 1 if you love it so much? And it is a good question. But it's a question I've also answered. Fear 1 doesn't run right on new hardware. Even when you use the PC Gaming Wiki and you use all the fixes and you use all the things to get a better FOV, to make the game run at good refresh rates, good frame rates, widescreen, even then when you've gone in and messed around with the mouse, which I'm telling you right now, ladies and gentlemen, the chances of that mouse being able to get anywhere close to what you like your mouse as are probably going to be quite difficult to do. Like, even when you get all of that put together, the game runs oddly too. So the stuttering that you see on this, there's going to be a whole host of problems that happen because it's not meant to play on the software that it's playing on. Or the hardware, sorry. It's a software that was designed for different hardware, and it has these weird adverse effects. Now, if they were to go back and touch Fear up, and not touch it mechanically, but streamline all of those problems so that it runs really great and it scales really well on future tech and future hardware, then I would cover it in a heartbeat. And I would not do no slow-mo. To use no slow-mo in the first Fear would be to insult the game, because that game is so much better for that mechanic. And Extreme is already really difficult on Fear 1. It's a super challenging game. And there's no fucking robot sections, so that's awesome. But keep on pushing forward. We're moving now towards the heart of the epicenter. We've got a couple of fights coming up, and then we're going to be getting to the train. The crazy... It's like a cargo elevator, and it has by far the most demanding and intensive gunfight in the game. And then you have to get off it at the end, and if you don't, you die. And I couldn't figure out where you're supposed to go, so I bloody died. But luckily, they give you a checkpoint, which is nice. I love this particular skybox here as well. But you can see a really jarring line on it of where it's not perhaps scaling so well, which is unfortunate. But dropping to this pipe, then it's going to lead you down into where we need to go. And then we're going to be pushing into the hardest part of the game by a large margin. And I just hope you're enjoying the video, guys. This one started out as something silly and derivative, and it got hard quick. It got annoying fast. And when I say hard, it's not the hardest thing you'll ever do. It's not even that difficult. But it's hard compared to the stuff I've been doing, you know? Compared to the shit I've been playing. When you run round a corner and a guy one-frames you when you've got full armor and full HP, and he's using a shotgun from a distance where you're not used to dying, it really leaves a taste in your mouth. And because we're so privileged now with games, where games just hold your hand the whole time, give you a hand job, and then like buy you dinner, you don't face adversity. And unless you're doing some kind of challenge run and something kind of specific, it's easy to fall out of the habit of getting bullied. And luckily for me, I play a decent amount of Doom Eternal at the moment. I'm trying to figure out how to stream that game, and I'm having problems with it. And when I play Doom Eternal, I play it on over 400 frame rate. And when you have over 400 FPS, the game turns into this absolute fucking super speedy nightmare. So standard enemies turn into hit scan devils that never miss, and the whole game is just an absolute ass clapping. It's really fascinating, and it's hopefully going to make for some interesting recording. But thanks to Doom kicking my ass, I'm still used to things kicking my ass, because video games now don't kick ass. They just don't. It's not lucrative. It's not cost effective to make a game that only 3% of the population can do, you know? That's once again why Doom Eternal is so important, because AAA Studio made a really difficult game, and they didn't need to. They absolutely didn't need to, but they did it anyway, and that takes a lot of balls, and I love them for that. And I really hope that people pay attention, because the last time a development studio went whole hog and made a difficult game, we got Dark Souls. We got this genre-defining, industry-changing, like weird fever dream of difficulty where everybody was into difficult games. Everybody wanted a challenge. Everybody wanted to say that they'd beaten Dark Souls, that they got Dark Souls on their fridge, you know. Everybody wanted this badge of honor. And the irony, for anybody that's played, you know, a hard game, knows that Dark Souls isn't that hard. Dark Souls is like a light breeze compared to some of the shit I could set up for you if you wanted to try it. Like, beating Dark Souls is the equivalent of playing fucking Smoke on the Water when you first pick up the guitar. Like, Smoke on the Water is an amazing song, but that riff ain't hard to play. Does it sound sick? Does it make you feel like a badass? Absolutely, but did you beat Dark Souls? Good job, dude. You played Smoke on the Water. You know? Now let's try playing some Steve Gilbert. Oh, what's that? Ah, yeah, you see it a bit different now, isn't it? Mr. Gilbert's come along and shit in your mouth, and now you're destroyed, and now you're dead, and now you're continuing, and now you've uninstalled the game. You know? It's crazy. It's insane. But I'm really hoping that we can see that resurgence again, because there's a place for difficult games and there's a place for casual games. These things can coincide. This is the really hard part, by the way, guys. This reminds me of a sequence in Vanquish, which is kind of interesting. It's the same concept. Two parallel trains coming next to each other and interacting between the two. So make sure you can stick yourself next to some chest-high cover. The train is full of it. There's some really, really good clipping spots here. And the moment you see something bad, you need to nail it. And this is another moment where you want to use your grenades, you want to use your med packs to keep you alive if you need them, and you need to realise here, guys, that I don't think this segment has that many checkpoints. Oh, and this bridge here lets enemies get to you. So they're all going to try and run onto it, and when they do that, you want to take them out. But it can also be cover too, so it can stop them from being able to shoot your upper profile, but this is where it starts to get really interesting. So enemies on your train, enemies on that train. This particular clipping spot over here, really good too if you crouch on it, because the enemies, they prioritize going into cover. So you want to just, as many bullets towards them as you can, move around dynamically as they turn. Like, look at this right now. I was in, my anus was pinching a diamond right here, because I was just like, oh my god, they're everywhere. This is crazy. That guy has a shotgun probably, but he's dead now, you know? You've just got to keep your calm, keep your composure, stay in cover, and just pepper. Keep on peppering. It's a great fight, this. It's a real good one. And I don't know, I just don't know how I'm alive. Because in my mind, like, boom, see that? That can happen at any moment. I should use a healing pack. Yeah, there you go. That was clever. So, no checkpoint. I'm going to go and grab that just in case, and then I'm going to go and sit back over here. Something's kicking off, so I'm going to move forward a little. But did you see that fight? There's your checkpoint. Boom, that's good. That's real good. That fight just there, that room, you can die in seconds. It's probably not up to you. And I'm happy to report I got that on one attempt. But that is a super unreasonable encounter. This one is, so far, completely anchored in your favour. These guys have to abseil before they can get to you, which is, they'll never survive it. Like, look at this bloody gun. He's the biggest issue, that one guy. The one dude on the same level as us, he's the only threat here. And this gun, it does so much hit stun, they can't shoot you when you hit them with it. I should be using the crate on the left-hand side here. It's a much better clipping spot. They're coming down again. You can see them. This is an awesome sequence, guys. This is one of the best gunfights in the game because it's putting pressure on us. This is one of the only fights in the game where they pressure you like this, and it's excellent. Look at me getting hit. Look at these hits. I'm getting absolutely tagged. Grenades, pressure, more pressure. Can't move forward because they've got me covered. Like, this is exactly what you want. This is great encounter design. And like, I'm thinking that you have to interact with one of these at some point, and you absolutely do, but it's not that one. But go and get some ammo back, push forward. Yeah, this whole segment is great. I didn't realise there was a checkpoint in between those two fights. I thought this was all on the same life, and if it was, it would, like, look at the checkpoints actually. The checkpoints here are pretty great, and that's where I died trying to get off the train. So you've got to run over here to this button, and there's a couple guys that spawn, and he killed me, I think. It was either him or the train just fell off the tracks or something. But yeah, this is probably my favourite gunfight in the game. Just because it's... This is what you pay for, you know? When you put a harder difficulty on, you want to feel like you're on the back foot. Like you're pulling out all the stops. And this is it. This is the encounter. And this is way better than the assassin room coming up, which is just... That room is awful, dude. It's not even fun. It's just annoying. And there's tons of checkpoints here as well. They're really generous. Yeah, I take back what I said earlier, guys. I mentioned that this area had like a really long checkpoint, and it kind of did when we were fighting that first battle with the platform that let them transport between the two trains, or the trams, sorry. But this was super fair, really well designed. Watching it back, in the heat of battle, you're shitting your pants the whole time, you know, you're just like, oh my god, this is crazy. How am I alive? This is so crazy, this is taking forever. A single minute feels like an hour when you're in the thick of it. But watching it back impartial a week after... When was that? I think it was like 3 weeks ago when I recorded this. Like, looking at it, they did a really good job with this. Yeah, and we got armor back too, which is awesome, but we're 2 med packs down. That was when the tram killed me, that just then, guys. You have to press this one, and the telegraphing on what you have to press is not the best. Like 2009, 2010, there were certain things in waypointing that some games were doing and other games simply weren't. Like, for better or for worse, Monolith are really interesting with their design, and there's a lot of old school sensibilities, so I kind of appreciate it. And then here we are, guys, moving towards the vault. Which, I don't know if it's called the vault in this game, but it is in the first game. When you enter the vault and find where Alma's sealed, it's like one of the coolest parts in any video game. And then when the nuke goes off, I remember booting up Fear at the end and getting Aiden to come over to my house just so I could show him on my dad's PC that nuclear explosion. Because I'd never seen anything like it, and I thought it was the coolest thing in the world. Standing facing down a nuclear explosion like that and getting knocked over, it was so cool. Do you ever do that anymore, guys? get so excited over something in a game that you just have to show one of your friends. I feel like it just doesn't happen. I feel like maybe we're so desensitized to the cool moments in games that they don't have those standout moments where you've just got to show everybody. Like, every so often they have those memorable sequences, but it's just not the same. Ooh, assassins. So here's the rule of thumb, guys. Whenever you see an assassin, there will always be more. There'll always be more. They generally come in packs of 2, packs of 3 in certain encounters. And whenever assassins are present, you will not see other enemies. If you do see other enemies, the assassins will generally kill them as some kind of scripted moment. It's... Right now, you know, there are going to be more assassins, because the whole sequence here is leading up to that, as we move through this reactor. And you'll see a shimmer, you'll see like some electricity, there he is, boom, see him? And now you know you're in for it. And the thing with these guys is they like to get into position, they like to hide. They do this thing where they're up against on the wall, where they stick to the wall and they're invisible, and when you go near them, they come from invisible and they drop off the wall. It's like a scare that they try to do. And it's the personification of the assassins. It's what they did in the original Fear. And we haven't really seen it in this. And this is the room, guys. This is probably the worst room in the game. This is a gauntlet of assassins, and without slow motion and shield, it's a pain in the ass. Like, I was here way longer than I wanted to be. It took me like 10 attempts. And the whole time I was hungry. I was annoyed, I wanted the game to end, I was super frustrated. And they come at you in pairs of 2. So when this goes upwards, the first ones are going to be in front of you, and they're going to run on the side of the factory walls and then drop onto this position. That was the stutter doing the weird thing. There's the first one, you see him? So he's going to run towards you, and then there's going to be one on the left that sometimes mantles up the platform. See him? There he is. He's going to come up, we're going to hit him with this, and then 2 more turn up. That guy, and then his friend just there that drops behind you. And if you get lucky, you'll kill him with this slow-firing garbage gun that's actually pretty good against assassins, but I didn't. And then when you drop down here, as you progress forward, every part of this is going to populate pairs of assassins. And then at the end, there's a handful that come from the door. But they all have to mantle, so you want to use that as your advantage. You want to get them to do what they do, and you want to keep your head on a swivel, because if you die here, it's before you even press the button to get up to where the first assassin was. And it's so easy. If I get hit now, I'm dead, pretty much. If they get that electricity on me and it continues to shock me, there's probably nothing I can do. And I really don't want to die, because I just find this whole sequence super shitty. And I'll reiterate, there he is. I never remember this being a problem, because on when you're using slow motion, as soon as you see the shimmer, you freeze them. You freeze them, you shit on them, they're dead. But there's some armor, that's awesome. We're going to have to touch that button down there, and I think when you touch the button, I think another assassin turns up. So just keep your eyes on everything here. Because you know he's there, he knows he's there, it's just when. It's a case of when, it's not if. And the invisibility isn't complete invisibility, but it's enough to catch you out. Like, it's easy to say, oh, they're easy to see. Yeah, they are easy to see. But you know when you don't see them? You know the one time you miss them? Well, guess what? You're in trouble. And when you get on here... You can see me, I know it's going to do it. I just don't know when. There he is. So he drops down there. I get that shot. It kind of whiffs, but it still gets him, which was handy. And then again, just keep on looking, because it's the ones that are behind you and they sneak up on you. They're the ones that get you. So I think there's one more on this catwalk. There he is. I threw a grenade then because I wanted to shock it and walk into it for safety, but it didn't work. And then I think there's 2 more when you get to the top of here. So I'm going to pre-grenade that. Oh, he's behind me. See that? Dude, the shotgun failed me then. And I'm just going to run because I know this is a trigger. And boom, you've done it. That didn't look like much, guys, but I'm telling you, That right there was the most resets in the whole game. That one sequence with those stupid assholes, by far the most resets and the most frustrating segment. Like, that was more frustrating than the Mech segment, because the Mech is just garbage and not fun, whereas that's really demanding. And there's times when your gun kills the assassin really quick, and there's times when he just jumps through your bullets and hits you. And it's definitely intriguing, and it's hard too. So, as much as I want to say that segment's garbage, it shouldn't be like that, it's okay. I was just in a really bad mood, and I didn't want to be playing the game. I wanted it to stop, you know. I wanted the game to just go easy on me and let me win, and it wouldn't do it, and it shouldn't do it, because the whole point of this is to be challenged, and that was challenging. But here's the big doors. Fear loves big doors, sealing away dark secrets. And then this room here is a super sniper-heavy room. It's a pretty fun room, though, because the snipers, for some reason, they don't react as quickly as they seem to at the start. The area with the APC earlier on. See the dot? See the dot just then? Boom, see you later, friend. Like, they give you a really nice grace period with these dudes, because if they didn't, this would be like the Jackals in Halo 2 on Legendary. Like, be grateful it's not like that. But there's our checkpoint. The music's kicking off, telling us that there's way more fun to happen. That right there was a leg shot, and it did not kill. So, this weapon's really good, but you have to hit vitals. And I'm going to tentatively step forward here. And I'm really tentative on this moment, purely because I don't remember the spawns. But luckily enough, you can react to most of this, and it really isn't a problem. This is a pretty cool room, actually. It's quite dynamic. It's got a lot going on, and it's got a lot of red herrings going on too. Like, they want you to counter snipe. That's the whole point. Because when you get to the top here, the area that you came in from, a bunch of reinforcements turn up. But here's a guy just on the left. I can hear talking as well, which tells me there's probably more than just him. Music's keeping a nice level of tension. I've got a random side pain happening right now, guys, so if I die, just know that I didn't achieve as much as I wanted in life. And now we need to get rid of the obstruction. Down here's some armor and some HP. There's another checkpoint. So that was only like 2 dudes, right? That's really easy, that one. And a checkpoint for 2 dudes. Very generous. But these snipers, if they land, like this guy, if he gets a shot off, you've probably got 10% HP left. It's bad news bears. Luckily, he's not very good at taking cover, so we can take advantage of that. And here we go, we get the commencement of some extra troops. There's another laser, did you see it? The snipers are so funny in this game, because they've got this weird, like, ratty run. They all jog around, all squinty. They look a little bit like, you know, Snake in Metal Gear Solid 4 when he does that crouch walk. It's really goofy. I like it, though. It's a nice touch. And I'm just trying to assess here where the threats are going to come from, and I want to try my best to get some ammo back, get some grenades, get some... I've got my armor, which is good. Armor is your safety blanket in this game. When you don't have it, you die so quickly, but when you do, you always have an opportunity to fight back against everything but the shotguns. And we've got a big audio stinger just then. Screen's shaking. I don't like how exposed I am, so I'm going to try and get out of here. And somebody's lasering me, did you see that? I just took a stray bullet off a normal replica, that guy. But I think there's more sniper dudes turning up because there was a laser at one point, but I can't see him. So I'm trying to peek. There we go, there's a guy just there. Guy to the right. Someone set me on fire, that's not good. I think he's beneath me. I don't know what that was. Huh. That was a spooky ghost. You can't floor bang the grate. So don't do that. That wasn't a kill, right? No, he's alive. That was a kill. That was a micro stutter. Someone else is peppering me. Yeah, there doesn't seem to be any snipers in this part. Maybe it's just sugar-puffed assault guys. They're chunking my arm a little bit, but I'm at such a distance that it's only taking off a small amount. That hurt. Another guy. He's behind that box, isn't he? Oh wow, I could not see him. Luckily, when I was playing, I bloody could. Just goes to show, doesn't it? You know, when you're playing a game. I recorded this game in one sitting, start to finish. It took about... I think it took about 5 or 6 hours, all combined. And you do get sharp, you know, when you play a game like that. When you do a game in such a sitting, by the end of it, you are so tuned in. It's like you've been playing it your whole life. So my eyes were just super on it in that moment. And I'm sat here now with none of the pressure of playing. And I still didn't see that bloody guy. But it was cool too, you know. To record Singularity in one day, and then in the next day, record Fear 2. 2 guides recorded in 2 days is... It doesn't sound like much, but it's actually pretty damn good. Especially when you've been doing it for as long as I have, and you've made as many walkthroughs as I have. It's not like when you first start out and you'll make 50 guides a day because you're doing it 24/7, thinking that you're going to... You know, in 5 years from there, you're going to be the biggest YouTuber in the world. You're going to have girls on every angle of your dick talking about how good your fucking thumbnails are or some shit. It's not like that, you know? You're not jaded, you're not bitter, you've not been bitten. You've not seen the reality of building Rome and no cunt turning up. So to do that it's interesting. It was fun. It was really fun and really motivating too. And then the edits were really quick as well. I forget, I think... Singularity took 2 hours to edit, which was one of the quickest edits I've ever done. And this game took about 3 hours to edit, which is really awesome too. And this game has got a lot more editing than Singularity because it's a lot more difficult. But alas, just a little peek behind the curtain for the people that are interested. I know not everybody is. But let's face it, if you've made it to 3 hours and 15 minutes into this session, I think you've done pretty well. I'm barely holding on, and I'm bloody doing it. This is a narrative moment, this. I could have absolutely trimmed it out, but here we are. They're essentially giving you an exposition dump about what happened in the first game. Personally, I think it's lame. I think it's a lame storytelling device, but it's for the people that didn't play Fear 1. And it's also tension building too. You have this train constantly just driving through this tunnel. You've got this dude dumping all the sympathy votes onto you because they treated Alma like shit. And we're finally going to enter the denouement as the screen starts to bleed into this effect that randomly vanishes. And we get to arrive at Still Island facility. And here comes the elevator. And now we get an interesting piece of environmental navigation, you could say. Alma turns up. You have a wrestling fight with her. She's got the good biddies as opposed to the emaciated, nasty skeleton tidbitties, which I think we can all agree is quite a nice transformation when you go from Crypt Keeper to just, she's a keeper. But you have to move around the boxes here, and I was looking around to see if there was any sneaky weapon caches. But it doesn't seem like there are. There are times in shooters where you can find all kinds of cool stuff, and there are times when you absolutely cannot. And you can also get stuck here if you're not careful, so be very careful messing around jumping. But there's a path over here with a health pickup that makes you seem like you want to go that way. And then there's this bit over here where you can kind of jump on that box, and I thought you were going to be able to do some platforming here and find something interesting. But in the end... I think it's just a trigger that makes Alma turn up and move the boxes. So you come all the way to the left, and then when you come into the middle, she does this. And I just don't really understand it. It's weird. You can't actually get there or get close to the elevator until you make that trip. It's like a strange scripted scare moment, and then now you're at the elevator and you're fine and everything's good. But that's one of the weirder parts, that, for interacting with Alma and affecting the world state. And then she has a go at you in the elevator, because scary naked lady is very scary. And now we're going to move on to some of the more patience-testing fights, because there's a lot of bad shit coming up. But it wouldn't be Fear 2 if we couldn't see some swings and some scientists and some questionable treating of children for the pursuits of biological terror. And we now get to push into the reactor cooling tower, like crazy industrial estate thing. I pushed the swing as well, because, I mean, you've got to push the swing. That's what it's all about. There's 2 or 3 fights in this area that start with great stutters, always fun to see. But they start with a ladder. You come through this corridor here, and then on the other side of this, there's a guy that comes down a ladder, and then after that, it triggers this huge fight. And the fight is multi-layered with lots of enemies, and then you get on a turret, and then the turret is like the other turret section where it's kind of tricky because you have a limited, finite amount of resources, and you can't defend yourself by moving, so you have to shoot them before they shoot you. And beating AIs with perfect aim is difficult to do. But the one area of this that makes it a lot more manageable is that behind us there is some body armor. So I'm going to do this whole sequence as best as I can, and then once the dust has fallen and we're ready for that next sequence, we can come all the way back and pick up that armor. And there's some interesting triggers here as you push forward. And they're very deliberate and they're very noticeable, and at this moment in time I'm making sure that none of them are happening, so that I can push forward, trip them, and then when I do trip them, immediately kill them. Because right there is the stinger telling you that something's changed. There's the world state shifting, and then here comes, I think that is a heavy with a hammerhead. Or it might just be a shotgunner. But there's a decent piece of cover here that you can use, and you do have the sniper rifle. I'm going to be a little tentative because I don't know whether or not they can push me in this position. And there's a gun shooting, but it's your teammates shooting the turret, and they're doing it in... It's almost like they're having a picnic in the spring. It's ridiculous. They're just sitting there and looking at all the life coming back as they shoot into the sky with rivers of chocolate and gumdrop smiles. And they're not helping at all. I don't actually know if they can help. I think it's just cinematic fire for the sense of engagement. But we do have an empty garbage super gun, so that's cool. The next time we see a weapon that's worth picking up, we're going to do that. And our armor's taken a bit of a toll here, but it's nothing too bad. So hopefully we can pick these people off. This is another one of those fights I remember from first playing too, because it's a meaty one, this one. It is interesting too that he slaps the gun. I think that's a funny touch. He's doing like a bootleg HK slap on this bootleg HK gun. But the music is thinking the game is way more exciting than it is right now. And I need to be super careful, because when you make movements between cover like this, when you could be tripping spawns, you could essentially seal your own fate. You know, sign that death warrant and you can't do much about that. But these boxes are going to be helpful because I can jump above them and see what's happening. Throw a couple of pre-nades. Shoot in between the gaps. Fire's really good too because it makes them flinch and dance around. So we have a super advantage if we can catch them off guard. Problem here is this. You don't want to get into corridor shooting when your cover does not cover your whole body. Because the NPCs, they'll just hit you in the chest. They'll hit you in the chest a bunch. You'll eat way more damage than they will. You want to be super careful. Always try to aid strafe if you can. Philadelphia dog. And also realise that saving grenades for the final encounter that's coming up now quite quickly is a good idea too. So don't go too ambitious with your grenade throws. Because the more grenades you have at the end of the game, the easier it's going to be. You only really need the shot grenades if you pace them correctly. But I'm going to throw them like a maniac, and it's checkpoints after you do certain things. and I put my back against a wall to having to use more than the standard shot grenade, so learn from my mistakes if you can. Can't mantle these either, which is unfortunate. But if you look, this is where your team is. This is where your team is on that gun, and they're just not helping. They just sat and watched you single-handedly take out a small army. And now they're going to talk about how awesome you are when they literally did not help. And they want you to talk to them and do the trigger here. But you can now go all the way back and grab the armor, which is what I recommend you do. Because not having armor for the next sequence, probably a huge pain in the ass, I would imagine. And now there's more enemies spawning. That right there is the replica voice. That was a no-scope. That's pretty nice. I got no bullets! Oh no! How did that happen? That was hilarious. Someone's shooting at me right now. I have no HP and I'm getting on the turret. This is a terrible thing to tell you to do. Interesting, did you see that? It gave me armor. It gave me armor, and I think it gave me med packs. Maybe they just... That's kind of cool, actually, if they reimburse you like that. Because this segment is... It's really tricky to do this without getting nailed by people that you can't even see yet. And again, guys, watch your HP. As soon as your HP drops below about 15 to 20%, that's when you want to pop the med pack. If you pop the med packs too soon, you will not have the time you need to survive. And unfortunately, you can't kill these people quick enough so that they don't hit you. They're hitting you through fences and shit. Like, look at this, man. It's bullshit. Like, they're all jogging towards you, but they're just hitting you because they've all got brilliant aim. And you can't even see them and they're still tagging you. So you really want to try and do as much bullshit splash damage you can to try and hit them in the ankles and hit them around cover, and as soon as that life drops, hit that med pack. And do your best to just keep ahead of it. If you do die here, the good news is you'll learn the spawns and you'll understand when to flick between the areas, and you'll get a little bit better at understanding when people are dropping and how they're dying and things. But look, that's it. It doesn't look like much, but they're really challenging for turret sections. And it's just because your life doesn't regenerate. In most games with turret sections in this era, your HP comes back for free. So you'll never remember them. You'll never even need to, because they're just throwaway sequences that split up the gameplay. They're the hors d'oeuvre in between the meals, you know. And you need that sometimes. You need that pacing, and you need to cleanse those experiences so you can see things fresh and appreciate them. You need the peaks and valleys, the ups and downs. But when you put a player into a situation where you have to sit on this turret and there ain't anything you can do, when you increase the difficulty, you really realise just how little those moments get tested. Because some of the hardest sequences in any of the games I've covered on YouTube are usually moments where they did not put in the time to realise when you crank the variables on the enemies, all you do is destroy the hope of the player in a moment where they cannot defend themselves. And the best example of it is probably the brutal series of walkthroughs I made for Uncharted. There are scripted sequences on Uncharted where you're on the back of a car, or you're on a turret, or you're on some kind of scenario where they expect you to survive and shoot back, and before the game even gives you control, while the screen is fading in, you've already been killed. And you can't control that. And this is something that needs to change in fundamental design. When you are on a rail segment, a rail shooting segment where you're in the back of a car or you're in a helicopter, no matter what it is, they need to give the player the option of defending themselves. They just need to do it, and I feel like Time Crisis nailed this in the arcades in the late 90s or whenever it came out. Give us the opportunity to hide. Hide and get our HP back. Give us something defensive that lets us fight back, that keeps us in the fight, but doesn't make it too easy, but alleviates it from feeling like bullshit. There's nothing worse than dying on a segment when you can't do anything. Like, unless you designed a game where you can shoot everybody perfectly before they hit you, you should never ever have to do things wishing the opponents don't do what they're supposed to do. And if you have to rely on RNG and random bullshit just to survive a segment, you didn't design it right. And this segment here is suffering from the FOV that I've altered. So if you're wondering why the screen looks so weird then when he grabbed me, it's because of that. But this is the end of the game, guys. This is the final firefight, and you are going to be assailed by phantoms. Phantoms with guns that go down in like one hit. This is where you want to spend your grenades. You want to chuck your grenades out, and all you have to do here, guys, is you have to hit this computer. Every time you hit the computer, it plays this cutscene of him grabbing you, you get a checkpoint. And you're getting ridden by Alma, which is going to pay off later on in a pretty interesting way. And then, after the checkpoint, it resets you, and it gets incrementally more difficult. Each time you do this, you generally get assailed by more phantoms, and you want to just grenade, run, and rush the computer. Right then, I didn't fight anybody, and none of them shot me. If they shoot you, dude, you go down immediately. These dudes do not mess around, they just lay you down. It's complete decimation. And then this is the final one, this is the more difficult one, and at this moment I've been really heavy on my grenades, so I have to use normal grenades. You can save a shock here, or maybe an incendiary, and you'll be fine. I'm throwing literally everything and having to shoot, because I did not pace my grenades correctly. So, don't do what I did, guys. Be more intelligent. I'm even setting myself on fire, which doesn't help. But as long as I get to the computer, I'm done. And that's the end of the sequence. And then this is really funny, this dude. If you don't tap F, this is an endless minigame. Like, if you don't shoot then, he pushes it back to you, and you have to tap F again. You can keep doing this forever. You could loop this for 10 hours. Just 10 hours of fighting with a ghost. Which I thought was really funny. It reminded me of, like, a Naked Gun scene, where they're trying to kill each other, but they're not really trying, and it just looks stupid. And then we get this really weird effect on Alma as she dissolves. And that right there, ladies and gentlemen, is the end of the walkthrough. Enjoy the bonus clips, thank you for watching, and you take care now.